Welcome to the Squad Games Podcast. Squad Games Podcast.
Welcome to the Squad Games Podcast. Today, this is where we like to roll dice and talk about it. Today we have two experts. I'm pretty sure dude, we haven't used that line in like forever.
Where we roll dice and hear ourselves talk. We haven't used that since probably episode, 13.
Yeah, and we're like episode, what is this, 109, 110 or something?
109 is right, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Well, long journey. We've been here for quite some time.
A lot of episodes.
Yeah, so today we have Jason, and we have Anthony. Both are experts in Wyrmblade. So today we're going to bring you guys faction knowledge on how to play Wyrmblade from two people that are very good at Wyrmblade. Jason, you just won a 40-person tournament with them. Anthony, you've won multiple tournaments with Wyrmblade throughout the past few years. And you did just win the beatdown first overall, which was a 28-person, which we just attended last weekend.
30 Wyrmblade in like the top 4, I think.
Yeah.
If I look at the scores right. Yeah.
Yeah. Wyrmblade are pretty good right now. Pretty good. So, but yeah, how have you guys been doing?
Chilling. Pretty good.
Chilling?
Just got off work, walked the dog, and ready to get on the podcast.
All right. Sounds good. Anyone see Deadpool yet? We can't give any spoilers out.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk over anybody, so I was waiting. I did.
It was my favorite Marvel movie I have ever seen.
Oh, wow.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was pretty good, dude. It breathed some life into Marvel. They need it right now. Them and Guardians were kind of like the two. I keep telling everybody they're just doing like the whole like, all right, we're keeping it back or we're bringing it back, and they're just like shooting some electricity back into the Marvel body, dude.
That's Ryan Reynolds for you. Hugh Jackman, dude. You know?
It was great.
Yeah. They become the prime roles of our world. So, our universe. I'm pretty excited to get this started. Try not to put any spoilers in the comments if you guys have seen it. So, should be good. But today we're going to talk about Wyrmblade and not me being colorblind. I did enjoy Wolverine's costume, though. It was not.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, you're killing me, man. I want to talk about some things because, like, one specifically, I'm not even going to hint at it. I promise. Don't worry. But there's one I was jumping out of my seat, dude. I was just like, yeah, I felt like such a nerd. It was awesome.
It was sick. It was so good. Nerded out so hard. So. For those of you that don't know, I played Batman and Aquaman at Six Flags for a long time. So I'm a nerd at heart for multiple franchises, not just Warhammer universe. So
I think we all are.
Yeah.
You got to be. You got to be in this
heavy.
hobby.
Oh, yeah.
So starting off, what do you guys think is the minimum number of games that you'd feel comfortable learning and playing this team to take it to a 40-person event and win it?
I think I don't want to step on any toes. I think moving forward, I'll just let Jason go first. So go ahead, brother. Go ahead. You go first on all these.
The answer is 0 for me.
0. You just started.
Well, I had never played a game of Wyrmblade. Like I had talked about it with Brandon Beam, Kiddo Crew on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a Patreon stuff, and he was like doing a few games, and I was tired of getting diced as Inquisition. So I was like, who has really good rerolls? And obviously Wyrmblade came to mind. I didn't know much about the team, and I was like, all right, I found some cool models online they got for pretty cheap, which is sweet. And I was like, all right, we're gonna take them to the tournament, see what happens. But I don't think they played themselves by any means. Like I was just playing Inquisition beforehand, which is more difficult, I would say. Like just a lot more can go wrong. Like I was saying, you get diced once, one bad play, it's like kind of set you back. But going from that guard team to playing Wyrmblade, like when I've gone back to Inquisition, I'm a better player as a whole. But I think it's because like Wyrmblade is really good at like, it's really just playing the primary, right? Like it's pretty easy. You just play the mission. And that's one thing Inquisition sometimes, like at least with the Felgor meta, was like struggling with in my eyes. Prefers them in Commandos, so I think the team. Again, don't think the team plays itself, but I think it's got a lot of tools. It's very flexible, which is awesome, especially if you're a newer player. Like the issue I'd say if you're a newer player is like there's a lot going on. Just understand the basic mechanics, but it's very flexible, and that's what I liked about it. If I was in a jam, there's always some sort of player I could swing a guy around or something.
So now I don't think for everyone who's listening or watching this episode on YouTube, I don't think that Jason's the best person to say like how many games to actually take it to a 40-person tournament and win, because this guy went to SoCal Open only playing narrative, bringing Intercession, who was nerfed into the ground, their current state, last October, and won SoCal Open with them. So Jason's just really, really good. So the answer is not 0. That you should practice.
Yeah. So realistic answer, as I'm saying, realistic answer is like, I don't know. I'd probably say like you can pick it up quick after like one or two open games, 1 or 2 into the dark games. Once you understand like who you're going to really like making decisions around who you're going to put into hiding, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Understanding like what you can do early on, like using meticulous plan, especially on Into the Dark, like Turning Point 1. I think that's big. Once you understand the key decisions, after that, it's pretty much just like fundamentals. You have a lot of good weapons to do that with. So,
Anthony, you've been playing them since pretty much release.
Oh, dude.
And then you lost one team, and you built a new one. I don't know if you want to go down that route, but they definitely went into hiding.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
You got to bring up some trauma. All right, guys, we're just moving on. This is a therapy session now. I'm just trauma dumping on everyone. No, I mean, it's a pretty interesting story, so I'll just briefly say it. Played Wyrmblade probably from about 2 to 3 months after they released. And since then, I had the WYSIWYG for everything. So my Keller Morph was a Keller Morph. My Sanctus Sniper was a Sanctus Sniper, yada, yada, yada. I had that team for closing in on a year, and about a week and a half out from LVO, which was the biggest tournament, obviously, I had played up until that point. And for a lot of people, it tends to be that case. I mean, it does end up being, for the season, one of the biggest, if not the biggest tournament every year. So, about a week and a half before LVO, I commute and I mostly get around town on a motorcycle, and I had everything kind of in this box on the back of my motorcycle, and I'd been transporting all of my models in that way for almost a year. I had these motorcycle specific straps, and that week I had also decided to buy a brand new waterproof backpack, and it happened to be a little bigger than my previous one, so it happened to sit a little further back. And I was literally on my way to go play a game with a buddy, and I pulled up to a light after getting off probably a 20 to 25 minute highway ride, and the motorcyclist, and it's raining for context, and the motorcyclist is waving me down, and I just thought it was like the typical motorcycle wave. So I'm like, hey, what's up, buddy? And, just looking at him 2 lanes over to my right, and he's pointing behind me, and I happen to take a look, and I noticed that the container I used, while it was still holding on via the straps through the loops and whatnot, was just hanging off the side of my motorcycle, just open. And I just looked down. I pulled over to the nearest gas station. He even pulled over too, bless his heart. He didn't even know what was in there. It's just pouring rain. It was very cinematic. I'm sitting there just looking at this box. And for context, not only were Wyrmblade in there, I had Kazarkin, I had Breachers. Give me 1 second. I could actually look. I had my Beckguard team. And so I had about in total 60 plus models in there, fully painted. I was a hobby demon. A team would come out, and within the first week, I would have the team completely based, painted. I was known for that. I swore I was never going to have a pile of gray. I was never going to have a pile of shame. And they were just all gone. So I had to really piecemeal a team together. I hit up Dakotah almost instantly saying, hey, man, I need a Wyrmblade proxy team, can you help me out? And he found me a team. Shout out to Chris Bakke. He really helped me out. He had all the options, the magnetized options and whatnot. And ended up, so I still got to play Wyrmblade at the end of it all. Things ended up being all right. That was the story of my first Wyrmblade.
Yeah. And you've rebuilt them now, right? Bigger and better than ever.
I definitely picked up some new tricks since then. I have a couple proxies in there now, a couple I don't think they're aberrants. They're acolytes. So I have a couple of acolytes. You know, I have a Jackus or a Jackus.
The sniper one, right?
A Jackal Alphys, I think his name is. I'm so bad with the 40k names.
I
but
like Jackus though.
Yeah, Jackus. We'll just go with that. I have a Jackus as my Sanctus sniper. I just snipped him off of the motorcycle, and yeah, so we're all good.
That's a dope model.
Nice. Have you rebuilt your other teams that you lost by now?
Oh yeah. Everything's been painstakingly rebuilt. Yeah, not all of them, you know, are up to the snuff as what they were, or maybe I didn't build all the options and buy second boxes of things anymore. But yeah, we're all good now, thankfully.
Nice. I'm glad to see it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, how many games would you say you'd feel comfortable with, like a new player? Because when we're talking today, we're going to be talking to everyone. We're going to talk to people who are already experts at Wyrmblade, see if they can pick up any tricks. We're going to talk to brand new players that have never played the game, right? People months down the line, you know, that are looking to learn how to play the team. So, like, to somebody just starting, how many games would you say you would feel comfortable bringing and going positive, and then bringing and maybe winning the whole thing?
Sure. I will say, to preface this, moving forward, like any of these questions, it's going to be great because we're going to get some contradicting opinions between Jason and I. I just want everybody to know, everyone that's listening, there's no arguments here. There's no debates on things. That's kind of the beauty of Kill Team, is people can pick up a very similar team, and you know, people could play it completely different. It's almost like Commandos in a way. I won't go too deep into it, but just, you know, Commandos, they get one small buff and then you see tons of people start playing them, and even people are playing them different ways. So I just want to preface that, you know, if you hear a few different opinions on things, don't think, okay, well, I think this person's right, this person's wrong. It's just the approaches, maybe in Jason's local meta, or maybe in the matchups he's played, or the people he's played, things work. And then in my games, they don't work. And maybe for me, they do work, and for him, et cetera, et cetera. But enough yapping about that. If you're asking me how many games a player needs to play to at least go positive in a tournament, unfortunately, a lot of the answers I'm going to have for basically anything you ask me today is going to rely on it depends, or it's going to end with it depends, right? So it just depends on it depends on the player. You know, if you feel very comfortable in the game, when I teach games, and you know, we used to host a pretty big event, we'd get about 10 to 20 people, you know, every month here in SoCal. When we'd host that, and there were always people that came in, hey, it's my first game. I always loved teaching them, because I would always teach them the most difficult and annoying rules of the game at the start. So I'd be like, hey, visibility, you know, if you could see that guy's barrel, guess what? You could shoot him. Hey, obscuring, it's supposed to simulate this kind of fog of war, you know, there's a lot of debris in the road and maybe even smoke and stuff. So it's harder to see people from further away. And I'd compare to video games and cover, et cetera, et cetera. We've all been there, but you know, if you're a player that kind of started off learning a lot of those basics and learning positioning and learning like, hey, those are the breaks. If somebody can see the coattails of your Warp Coven Sorcerer, they can shoot them. And you kind of learn to embrace that. And maybe it's even something you like about this game, like the crunchiness and maybe even the sweatiness at a competitive level. Then, I mean, you might already be ready to play Wyrmblade. You might be transitioning from just another Horde team, and, you know, maybe you're ready to go. But if you're still kind of learning a lot of the positioning rules and maybe even obscuring and, you know, visibility, line of sight, things like that, if you're still kind of piecing those together in your local meta, and, you know, you're going to your LGS and your buddies are explaining you might be having some problems, I wouldn't say don't play this team, but just be wary that of all teams to play, this one's going to really feel bad. It's going to be like a kick to the teeth, because you're going to feel like you're dropping bodies instantly, even more so than Betguard. And there's not going to be any tools to pull you back into the game. Unfortunately, you're not going to have these in-depth atonement, you know, an APL distribution, a free mission action here, or anything like that dedicated to a model. I know Wyrmblade has a free mission action ploy, but it's going to depend. Realistically, I would say if you're already familiar more so with like I said before, the line of sight rules and stuff, because that seems to be the hardest thing for people to grasp, in the strengths and weaknesses of like elites versus hordes, I'd say you could probably jump into them instantly. You know, I'm going to kind of side with Jason there on that one. But if you're, you know, showing up to your LGS and, you know, your buddy, like I said, is explaining some stuff, and you're like, I'm just going to go back to intercessors for a while, and then you do want to pick up a horde team and they seem flavorful, maybe give it 5-10 games and just be aware that things aren't always going to go great at the start, but the team's going to feel very satisfying. So I'd say 5 to 10 on the newer end of things.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that you touched on a really good point, is that when you go to a tournament, you don't always have to be proficient, but to win one, you have to be.
Oh, definitely.
You're not typically, if you go in and you're not like really good at the rules, or you don't know all the crunchiness, sure, you can win a 16 person, 20, 24 person. And sometimes, yeah, sure, there's people that have, never played before, and won a whole tournament, right? But there are
5 up bolters, man.
Don't talk to me about lethal 5 up. I hate that. I hate that thing, dude.
It's funny, because intercession's actually pretty decent in a Wyrmblade, but that's besides the point. Yeah, I think that knowing how to play the game is always going to be better set. I think you said it very well, Anthony.
Thank you.
So yeah, so we're gonna dive right into it. I'm gonna pull up Wahapedia here, and
you should probably do the same in the off chance I need to reference something.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, Wyrmblade has been buffed quite a lot since they've been, brought out, and then they've gotten quite a few things, especially with their hiding tactical ploy. They used to struggle immensely on Into the Dark.
Yes.
And they were no fun, as Anthony would tell you.
I apologize to anybody that played me when I was playing ITD. I'll just throw that out there. I wasn't beat or anything, but they were just not fun games. I just don't understand that. I just don't get ITD.
Yeah,
just don't do it.
Have you overcome your dealings when you play ITD boards now?
Well, I mean, I have to suck it up, so you're not going to hear me like complain as much. Dakotah will come check in on some games. Like at LVO, he came and checked in on a few games as he's walking by.
Dude, I felt so bad for him. He got this year's LVO because last year's LVO, this year's LVO, he got paired into Felgor 3 times.
Oh my God.
He won every single time. And I was like, yo, dude, are you all right? And he was like, don't talk to me right now.
Oh, I'm in flow state. I was in flow state, dude. I was in flow state. It was such a crazy weekend. Oh man. It was such a fun weekend.
Yeah, it was a crazy weekend. And I think he was also playing on them on Into the Dark, which is also,
yes.
Felgor were a menace. I'm glad
I had to play Jimmy Kelly. Shout out Jimmy. I had to play him ITD, Felgor, peak of their meta. That like the game ended and I had like a buddy tapping me on the those scenes in movies where like somebody's, the flashbang goes off and you just see their face and like the ears are ringing and in the background it slowly fades in. Somebody's like, hey, get up. That was my buddy in the background after the game. I was just like zoned out. I was just completely flow state. Jimmy's over there telling me like, you won, you got it. Trying to shake my hand, just like zoned out. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. Shook his hand. We just walked away. I had no idea what happened for like an hour, man. Crazy.
It was a crazy time. For those of you that don't know me, Giacomo, and Saya, the trio of squad games, we run and host and TO LVO and quite a few other large tournaments out over here. Jason, this was also your first LVO, right? But you did not play Wyrmblade.
Nope, I played Inquisition, which half the games I played with Inquisition up to that point came from LVO itself, which was interesting. And that was probably not the right way to learn Inquisition, I'll be honest with you. It was fun at certain points, but there were some times where it's just like frustrating. Like I was so fried mentally by like the 6th game. I played against Intercession and I forgot to use Denounce. Like that's how fried I was. Like the best of the best of the team. Yeah, right. And I was like, man, why is this so hard? Yeah, it's like I'm bad at kill teams. But that's what I played at LVO. And it was at the end of it, like I really liked the team. It was fun. But I also kept trying to force the RBDs. Like I had just painted up the guys with the shotguns and I was like, let's go. Like you're gonna hear a lot about shotguns.
Everyone was on the Arbides hype train for LVO. They're like, oh, they're so good in the Felgor. They weren't.
There was like definitely like ways to play like the doors. Like that's probably the best thing I got out of like all of that was like learning how to like play around doors and Into the Dark. Like at the time I was so frustrated with the rules because I just didn't get it. I was like, well, how did these work? Right. But there's like ways to like set it up where it's like it's not what I would say is the best strategy. The breachers are definitely better. But with the Malakator getting like auto crits and things like that, being able to shoot into combat, like going on guard and then being able to shoot into melee when they charge someone, that's kind of big. But it's definitely not the best. It's fun, but it's not the best way of doing it for sure.
That's fair. So back to Wyrmblade here. We have some of their, I'll try to get rid of the ads, but some of the, the questions and buffs and stuff. Is there anything that got like that you guys felt really dramatically changed the team for the better outside of maybe getting the extra rerolls and stuff? Well, I guess this is more towards Anthony because Jason, you came in mostly when the team has already been kind of like super strong.
Sure, I'll jump in there. So, I mean, if I'm being honest, I don't know. I always tell people, I always warn people whenever they ask for advice or if I happen to give it, for better or for worse, I always tell people, hey, I might not be the best person to ask about things because, you play a team for so long and you play them against, the changing meta for so long. And, you kind of either stay in the mid pack or stay towards the bottom. And you kind of do it to yourself a little bit. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're walking along with a crutch. And if you're not aware of that, or if you don't accept that, you'll quickly become jaded. And it's kind of something, it sounds kind of deep, to be honest, and a little introspective, but it does kind of help you figure out like what you want out of something. Like, are you more results based and stuff? So if I'm being honest, when I saw the buffs, I remember, man, that day I thought like the president died or something, because I woke up that morning and like when they got buffed, sorry if you guys hear my dog barking in the background.
That's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, that day when they got buffed, I woke up to, I think, 13 different DMs and like 4 different tags, 2 in squad games and 2 in the command point Discord. Just, hey, what do you think? Hey, what do you think? What, like, let me pick your brain about this. Or, oh, they did it. They finally buffed them. And a couple of people just saying like, you sick bastard. Like, I can't wait to see what you do with these guys. And I was just like, I was barely waking up. I'm like, oh my God, it's like Christmas. I'm like, I can't wait to see the rules. And I mean, going back to it, if I'm, like I said, if I'm being honest, when I saw them on paper, when I saw the buffs, I wasn't really happy because it was a lot of buffs that they didn't need and they didn't really struggle with in the first place. So at first I couldn't really see how 2 and 2 equaled 5, so to speak. I couldn't see how a few of these buffs could equate to a top level team. And to be fair, not every team, and I say this a lot, not every team needs to be top level. And I kind of encourage that. And I encourage that not every team is. And I remember G and I talked briefly at the tournament this last week and we're like, yeah, it's kind of okay that some teams, aren't, top of the meta. They're not insane, because it leads to these like unfun playing experiences, but regardless, I was a little cynical at first. I was a little upset. I still kind of stand by some of them, to be fair. And I think that's why we kind of see at big events or large events where there's a wide variety of metas or a wide variety of teams, you see them not really blowing everyone out of the water anymore, because the buffs maybe weren't what they needed or were just kind of like adjacent. They just moved them to the side and they maybe changed some of their matchups rather than move them up. But I will not be sitting here on a soapbox saying the buffs weren't good.
Real quick, what exactly were the buffs? Like the suspensor system, I think, right?
Yeah, so it was a suspensor system.
Pull up the data slate.
Yeah, the biggest one was the suspensor system and the rerolls coming out of hiding. Those were, in my opinion, the 2 most impactful ones.
Oh yeah,
we could definitely.
All the rerolls were new, or is it just the rerolls? Like
just the rerolls out of hiding. Yeah,
out of hiding. Okay.
Yeah, those were the biggest ones. And then right behind that also was. They only got 3, to be fair. So the third one was the Talon, just getting a little more oomph. So he got his familiar soul sight action buffed, where he could kind of double hit, so to speak.
Oh, that's big.
Yeah, so it was pretty big. It also gave him, I think it gave him, if I remember correctly, no, he already had brutal and balanced. So yeah, all it did was allow you to resolve 2 hits. And this is so.
Teams.
Yeah, I kind of really like even like this. This is a good segue into an example of what I mean. Like it was adjacent. a buff was adjacent, because I'll just read it out real quick for you guys. So this is for the Talon specifically. And I'm not going to sit here and say, no, they need to buff the Talon. That's not my point here, but it's a good overarching theme here. So for the Talon, the buff was they added until the end of the turning point, each time this operative fights in combat with that enemy operative, and the resolve successful hit step of that combat, the first time you resolve one of your successful critical hits, you can immediately resolve one of your successful normals or a successful critical hit if you have none. So this is something I've been saying forever, essentially. Whenever someone would come up and say, man, this team feels so strong, this team feels so good, they feel so ridiculous to play against, why are not more people playing this team? I had to tell people, well, you have to understand, you're kind of seeing the fringe end of it right here. You're seeing, and look, I'm not here to gas myself up, that's not the point. I'm just giving you guys examples, and the only examples I can give you are myself. I'm telling people I've been playing this team for years. I'd like to think I did okay with them, throughout my tournament runs and whatnot. I've surprised a few people. There's been upsets and yada, yada, yada. So you're seeing kind of like the most optimized route of this stuff, because I had to learn trial by fire. I had to go to my LGSs. I had to go to these smaller tournaments that Dakotah was hosting. He was hosting these once a month. That was tons of fun. We were just going in, we were playing the same 12 to 15 people, playing 3 rounds, and we were going home, and I was getting my teeth kicked in with this team. And that's how you learn with anything. I come from like a sports background, and we were always told, since I was younger, you learn more from a loss than you do a win. It's pretty obvious, but I would have to tell people, hey, look, like I had to learn a lot. You're playing me at like probably my 200 to 250th game right now, and that's in person, that's TTS. I've played an absurd amount of TTS, an absurd amount of games in person. I can easily say I probably played 300 plus games with Wyrmblade. I have a screenshot directory of just all of my games played with this team, and it goes back pretty far. But regardless, I then break down the team for some people when they want to know, hey, how do I get better with the team, or even how do I beat it? There's a guy in my local meta, he might not be playing them right, or there might be just some weird thing he's doing. I go, well, look at this ploy. So for example, in the Talon, if you look at it, it's worded in such a way that you have to, if you have a normal, which you're probably going to have on a 2-up. If you have a normal and a crit, sure, you can hit for 9 damage because the operative hits for 3/6, right? So you can't immediately double strike with 2 crits, which I'm not saying I'm not saying that's the problem, but this team has a ton of conditions to everything they have. Their get down, Mr. President, you can perform a charge, and everyone always says, hey, in this game we were playing, how come you didn't, perform your little interrupt charge? Well, guess what? You have to perform a charge, and what do you have to be when you perform a charge? You have to be engaged to do so. So why would I just stick a model in the middle of the board on engage halfway through a TP1 so you could shoot them just so I could possibly get an interruption? It's just, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through with this team. And I think on the other end of that, when you look at the team and you figure out how to beat them, it's those things that you look at to kind of piece them apart. And this was a long tangent of, well, these are the conditional things, but going back to how I felt about these buffs, they were good, but in my mind, they weren't enough, or they weren't the right ones necessarily, because I didn't want more attached to this. This was awesome. I just maybe wanted a few things cleared up. But if you look at it now, honestly, the team feels great. There's still a few things, but no team's perfect, right? Unless you're Chaos Colts.
I think that's something we see a lot with kill teams. A lot of teams get weird buffs. And we see it with Kroot, right? Kroot have been buffed to Kingdom Come, and they still suck because they keep getting, the wrong buffs. But, Wyrmblade have been in the top 4 performing kill teams in the past 3 data slates. So they definitely are very, very strong right now. And it's typically because they perform so well on loot, but I heard you say a few interesting things we'll get into later, and that you really like them on secure and capture as well. So as we get through it, we'll talk some more about that. One of their other buffs, which was
these are some of my favorite things about the team, these recent buffs. So this is interesting. Is interesting, yeah.
Okay.
Especially like the or visible thing, like not just out of hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Just interesting. I like it.
Yeah, because they can start off like
It works so
behind
well
a
with
barrier.
Writhing Ingress. It works so good with the color morph. Like just move, shoot, dash behind cover, so he's out of visibility. Writhing Ingress, move through, shoot, dash back, right? And then like Turning Point 3, you just like eat them off the board, you know?
One of their other buffs was specifically to Into the Dark, where they're the only team that if they choose hiding, they are allowed to use 2 models, not just 1. And that's the very last sentence of from the FAQ, allowing them to do that. But they have to stay on conceal as they do so. But this does allow them to move up, open a door for free, so that they can get a shot off with a gunner, or they can have some other sort of threat towards a room, or even just get to the objectives a little bit easier. I know when this first happened, I think I spoke to Anthony and he said he wasn't like super like hot on that change. Where do you stand now, Anthony and Jason? Is this something that you really like for the team?
Yeah, I'll go first. I love it. And on Into the Dark, like, well, again, it's not a change to me. It's just how the team works, right? But on Into the Dark, like the Icon Bear, monster with this and Meticulous Plan. Like, it's so easy. Even like he's saying, like people always say, "Oh, Wyrmblade loot." Like secure and capture, like it's disgusting what you can do with the Icon Bear. I'll let Anthony kind of elaborate on it, but I like it a lot. I like the pop in the doors. Like interesting. I played a game against Sam the day before the tournament, and there is one ITD map where you actually cannot reach any of like the important doors with the 6-inch move.
Really?
I forgot which one it was. Yeah, and that sucked. But it was still interesting because you could use that to like guarantee. For me, I use it to guarantee gather surveillance because you can get technically one of the areas is like on their side of the board. So I know Anthony's not his head; he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But that was just interesting. There are maps where it's like not just absolutely broken. Like you're still moving a model 6 inches up the board, right? That's so huge, but I like it a lot with the Icon Bear. It's super strong on Into the Dark. Just the threat of that is just huge. You do still have the 10 activations, Turning Point 1. That's one thing to note on Into the Dark versus Open. You don't get the 11 if you put one of like your dorks in hiding. So yeah, but I love it.
That's fair. That's fair. So what about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I think I still kind of stand by my previous statement. And to clarify for those that aren't Dakotah or I, my statement was I'm a little bummed because I kind of just found some ITD tech with the team. You know, they felt like they had a little bit of punch paired with, you know, the 6-inch move with the heavy gunner. For anybody wondering why I'm leaning over, I'm petting my dog. But yeah, they had a surprising amount of punch in TP1, even with the 10 activations. Because of the whole move, I really like doing that with the gunners early on. So it felt like once again they just kind of neutered the team, and especially with 10 activations, the team kind of gets ran through after the fact. You know, it's the whole thing of just waiting and waiting with your activations, and then slowly but surely, once your opponent runs out of activations, you kind of have the board to yourself for maybe an activation or two. It's kind of the elite players struggle as well, but. I mean, I've grown. Just like anything else, you have to adapt. If you want to keep playing a team and you want to stick with them, you have to take the punches. You have to adapt. And I mean, anything. I agree with everything Jason said regarding the place. The Icon Bear is such a great option for early game aggression to try to steal some points and stuff. It's a bummer, but I mean, I do have to be a little empirical as well, where, we look at the data and it shows, that they're doing okay. So, I can't complain too much. I can't ask for, the team to have a little more lethality in TP1 if they're doing okay. Just my personal preference when I play them, I tend to play, maybe it's for better or for worse, because I've played our local area with this team so much that everyone just kind of sees things coming, especially the top level players in our area. I can't surprise them anymore with stuff. So they know those shortcomings and, they tend to take advantage of them. And that's kind of when you feel the pressure a little bit. But yeah, overall, I would say I'm just kind of chilling right in the middle. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's, it's again, one of those buffs that we just kind of move sideways with the team.
Mm-hmm. I think my very first game against Wyrmblade, so everyone knows, the very first time you play Wyrmblade, you're probably going to lose. My first game against Wyrmblade was against Anthony. and
I'm
I
sorry.
still can't get that out of my mouth. I think I was tabled by the end of turning, or by the beginning of Turning Point 3, but I only have one moral victory. One
Oh,
moral
no.
victory
I
the
hear-
whole game. The whole game. The only
I get
thing.
$1 from now for every time you tell this story. I get $1.
You'll probably have like $20 already.
Oh, easy.
Um,
It's a good story though. It is a fond memory.
Yeah, I had like my Melta and I had somebody else left. Like first activation, Turning Point 3, I think somewhere. It could have been Turning Point 2. I don't remember. But my Melta gun, who was injured, he only had 2 wounds left, turned the corner to his Keller morph, and I rolled like 3 mortal wounds, and he just whiffed everything, and like I just killed him, and I was like, yeah, that's right, Rambo, let's go. And then he died. So it was great though while it lasted. So
That was a fun game.
I've
It
never
was a
killed
fun
the
game.
Keller Morph.
See, now whenever I play them and I'm playing Vet Guard, I'm like, where do you put the Keller morph? I'm putting the Melta on that side. I don't care. Even if he dies, I got a chance. But yeah, they're a very tricky team to play against. They're a very tricky team to perform well with. And they have so much tech. The better that the better you are with the team and the rules, the better that you will perform with this team. Now their archetypes are Seek and Destroy and Infiltration. There's typically 3 variations of teams that exist in the meta. We have balanced teams, we have horde teams, and we have shooty teams. Sometimes it's like we might say like a melee horde or a balanced horde or like, an elite team or something like that, right? So there are those. When we're talking about teams, and maybe we'll get into some specific matchups, do you guys prefer Seek and Destroy or Infiltration? And against what teams do you typically deviate?
Do you want to take this one, Anthony?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump ahead. Once again, you're going to kill me every time when I preface these, but it depends. But most of the time, after so many years, I've found the most success with this team by kind of like dumbing things down, so to speak. So like a perfect example is Aiden in our local meta. Aiden McGeeth.
Aiden's a legend.
I don't want to butcher his last name, but I'm pretty sure it's McGeeth. Shout out to Aiden. He's probably my favorite opponent I've ever played against. He messaged me earlier today, and he even asked me, "Hey, going off of Wyrmblade, are there any times that you would run an auto gun for a guy just to, maybe get a crossfire?" And this is like such a simple question that I've seen asked a million times. I've even been asked this, and it sounds on paper, it just sounds so meaningless, right? You're looking at it, you're like, it's just an auto gun. Like, why are we going to have a full like conversation about it? But in reality, this team has so many moving parts, and for those of you that are coming from 40K, they play very similar to 40K. I have a few buddies that play 40K, and every time we've talked about Wyrmblade and I've kind of explained, they're like, "Oh, okay, so you're just 40K but tiny army now." Like they kind of are one of the most flavorful or true to flavor teams out there. But I like simplifying things as much as I can. So most of the time, horde teams, Seek and Destroy, you can't really go wrong. You're probably going to get, an Eliminate Guard. You're probably going to get a cheeky Robin Ransack late game with your leader, or even maybe with a knife, late game. And then your third, unfortunately, with this team, it's just kind of a gamble. I will be honest, with this team, if you get 4 to 5 secondaries, that's kind of like, you can consider that a perfect game. I was scrolling earlier, going through old messages that I have in the Discords, just looking, because I have a bunch of breakdowns on this team online. And one of them is within my first 2 months of playing the team, I have a post that was like, "Can anyone please help me break down how I score secondaries with this team?" So since day one, this team has struggled with scoring secondaries. And that was over 2 years ago. It was funny to look at. I started laughing because I was like, "I feel your pain, brother. I feel your pain. I'm still right there with you," because they're unfortunately one of the teams that just doesn't have any good faction tac ops. And if you think they're good, go for it. If I've seen tons of people argue, "Hey, well, I like Mark for Assassination. Hey, I actually like Perfect Ambush." Look, if you like those, go for it, brother. If it's working in your local meta, please keep using it. But for those of you that are trying to play this team at a high level and you're picking them up and you're like, man, I'm losing by 1 point or I'm losing by 2 points and, I'm only scoring 4 on my tac ops, just know that that's actually fairly consistent. If, if you're playing a team that you have a lot of good strengths into, sure, you might max out your tac ops pretty easy. You might run the gambit, but other people, they might have some tough matchups for you. You might never get a late game Robin Ransack. You might only get 1 point on it. You might only get 1 eliminate guard. I say suffering from success a lot because, you might just kill stuff so quick that you don't even have an eliminate guard. Route, you might only be able to get 1 on it. So I would say for the most part, into hordes, definitely go seek and destroy. If you're second guessing yourself, go seek and destroy. It can't be beat. Hybrid teams, it all depends. If I'm playing a more melee focused team like Felgor or Mandrakes, I definitely take infiltration most of the time. At LVO, for every single game I played against Felgor, I took infiltration and I maxed it every time. And into Mandrakes, I have success with it, but also into most elf teams, I love playing Seek and Destroy. So take your pick. It all depends on how your opponent plays. It depends on the mission too, because if it's capture, your opponent's going to have to sit on points. So there's a higher chance of you getting an eliminate guard at least 1 turn. And then later in the game, he's going to have to sit on 1 at the end of a turn. You might get another. If it's on loot and your opponent has, free mission actions, a high source of APL distribution, he's maybe going to be jumping onto points, jumping back off of them just to deny you eliminate guard. I do the exact same on the other end of things. So just keep that in mind. Into elites, my opinion's kind of changed. I used to play a ton of infiltration into them, but nowadays I've kind of switched it up. So because for context, the reason why I liked playing infiltration previously into elites is because you're the equivalent of like you're kind of showboating at the start. You really get this big lead. I'm gonna get a gather surveillance at the end of the turn. I'm gonna maybe even steal one of your home objectives. I might even get a seize defenses. I'm gonna 4-2 you. They're gonna look at the score. It might even be. There's been games, I promise you. There's been games I've played where I've gotten 7 points, 6 points in the first turn.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's a big show of force, it's a big presence, or so it looks that way. But later on in the game, you might not want to stalk that target. You might just want to kill that target now. You might not want to implant a guy. You might just want a little extra chip damage with your crit that does 3 damage, big surprise. So Seek and Destroy is pretty consistent into most of the elites now. The only time I would not take it is into intercessors because, they're going to take some melee guys. They're going to get in your face. And the idea is kind of clearing the board early. And then once the dust settles, you can kind of move up the board and just collect your eggs, just throw them in the basket. You're collecting your points at the end of the game. One team, I would say I take 9 out of 10 times infiltration. Speaking of elites though, 9 out of 10 times I would take infiltration is Nemesis Claw. It just something about it. It feels good. I've played some pretty high level opponents from overseas that really broke in some crazy tech with that team on TTS. A couple Spaniards, a couple Russians, and they're just like insane. And every time I've taken infiltration, it's felt good. They're gonna charge you. It's kind of something you can't avoid. So you're gonna get a few implants in. You're hoping for a little gather surveillance somewhere on a board after you kind of clear the board, because unfortunately that team's not really that tanky outside of the leader.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't play into their strengths of denying rerolls and stuff, you're gonna see the team kind of getting chipped away pretty easily. So you're hoping for a late game, gather surveillance, and then I do really like there's some boards where for subversive control the objectives are just barely just a hair off of the center line. And for those folks that are a little confused on that, you measure from the center. So if it's just off the center line in your opponent's territory for subversive control, guess what? You're revealing a tac op in the 3rd turn, which is always great. If it's a strong tac op that you can reveal late, that's always a good time. And, you might have already won that side and it's barely, 9 inches away from your deployment, and you might be able to score it super easily. So against Nemesis Claw, that'd probably be my take. But once again, it all depends on your local meta and it depends on your play style. I play very control-y. I play in a way that I like knowing what my opponent's doing at all times, or at least as much as I can. And I also hedge my bets as much as possible. I don't play a very aggressive Wyrmblade. I don't play as though I might get initiative or, things are going to go in my favor. I play the team pretty much the opposite of most people. I even though I have rerolls, you never know, you might just whiff. You never know, this might not go well. And if things go well, at least you've planned a contingency plan for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take.
How about you, Jason? Anything? Any specific teams you like specific archetypes into?
Pretty similar. I think I go more based on you talked about simplifying the team. I think that's the most important thing. You can do so much with the team that you just need to have a few bullet points, right? This is what I'm focused on. I mean, obviously you can't get locked in on anything, but for setup and initial strategy and stuff, have a quick 3 bullet plan of what your priorities are. The game's gonna happen, right? You start rolling dice and anything could happen. And
you were at the 45-minute mark. You're good.
Oh, perfect. All right, cool. So I think that one thing that came up was I was talking with Jimmy after he played Adrian at Tacoma, and I had told Jimmy because he was all right, let's talk Wyrmblade deck. I was I take infiltration all the time. It's great, especially versus mandrakes with the what's it called, the talent, because he can run in murk a dude and then dash to a barricade and or an objective, and now you have usually you got someone putting a barricade in an objective. That's usually my target for siege defenses and potentially subversive control late, right? He's also great for gather surveillance because he runs in and kills a dude and then dashes 3 inches away, so he's probably not going to be near anybody, and there's gather surveillance, right? So all that to say, I liked infiltration into them, but I think on capture, for instance, I would take seek and destroy against mandrakes, and that worked really well.
So sounds like a lot of just experience with the team is gonna,
or Jimmy's experience. He's the one who he played Adrian a lot, so then I'm just oh, perfect, I'm not gonna do that. Had it been me, that's what I would take it. I would take an infiltration. I still think it works, and I think that's the thing. It's flexible, right? So just think about do I want to be just playing the game for capture for me is I just want to run up and kill stuff and be standing on points, right? So I don't want to have to think about potentially reaching one of their barricades, or I have to hold this specific point, all that. That's my thought process with that on capture, especially with a team like mandrakes. But I think seek and destroy is more and more play. I just find it you mentioned missing a rob or not getting the full points on it or something. I've been in that situation just recently, and it sucks when you're I should have planned for this tac op better. But the whole point of taking seek and destroy is I didn't have to plan for the tac ops. But I think I agree with you said. Seek and destroy into guard teams, infiltration in most teams, even into Felgor. I started doing that on Inquisition and it works super well. Taking infiltration to Felgor is smart. And then most of the time I could see seek and destroy into elites. I've only had 2 elite games with Wyrmblade. They both gone in my favor, but it was pretty easy to score the secondaries just based on how those games went. But I could see seek and destroy being the better option there. But I the same thing though. You're mentioning Nemesis Claw. I haven't put against Nemesis Claw yet with Wyrmblade. That makes total sense what you're saying of infiltration probably just feels good against them. I would say if you're taking infiltration, you're taking implant. The one thing that I need to remind myself of is the knives are worth it. The 1 EP knives. That extra die is huge, especially now that you're doing a 50-50 with a 4-up. Having 4 dice, it just makes me feel better about taking it because you don't want to be sweating and being oh my God, I need to roll 2 hits on my 4-up, or you're injured, or a 5-up, and you're or I need to get a crit or something. That's not a great position to be in. So I just try and avoid bad situations like that. So I think the Colt knives are worth it, I think, if you're taking implant.
Moving on to the operatives in the lists, I think that it's a lot of it is kind of is generally standard. You kind of know what you're going to take. But for the people that don't know when to take the Kellermorph versus the Locust versus the Sanctus Sniper versus the Talon, what are your guys' thoughts into which team, and does it vary via the mission?
You want me to go first, brother? Or?
Yeah, you got it, man.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, dude, going to Wyrmblade, I could talk ad nauseum about this team. On my other monitor, I have 3 different breakdowns that are each full-on dissertations, basically, about this team I've done over the years. I'm not lying to you. They're insane. just like I've posted them on Medium and stuff before. I send them out to people. They're in the Discords. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the matchups, I will say 9 out of 10 times take the Kellermorph. That one's like an easy go-to. There's like almost no wrong time for the Kellermorph. He's just you can't beat it. I always love it when people, I tell them, hey, don't get within 6 of this guy. Please do not get within 6 of this guy. Just trust me. And, you roll and they're like, whoa, why are you rolling 5 dice? Well, he's got 5 dice. And they're, whoa, he probably hits on 3s, right? Or I always love it when I'm like, well, I'm going to shoot this guy. And they're like, okay, well, he's injured. And this might even be the first time I've shot with the Kellermorph this entire game. They're like, okay, he's injured. So I say the profile, I'm like 5 on 3s. And like, no, now he's on 4s. I'm like, check this out, man. I hit on 2s normally. Tons of dice. You're hitting on 2s. You have rerolls. Hard to beat. P1 rending. It's disgusting, man. Just this weekend, the Kellermorph on his own did I think like 15 wounds after Feel No Pains to Volgar, and I didn't even get P1 in rending in either of the shots. It's just the volume of dice at that point. So that was cool. But yeah. So Kellermorph 9 out of 10 times. Don't overthink that one. That's just easy. He has tons of neat tricks. His indirect is wild. Catches tons of people off guard. A quick little recon dash with him. He zones out whole objectives against elites. Yeah. I've completely shut down whole sides of a board before for multiple turns just by the threat of him. Just hey, I'm going to recon dash him up. And I could move and dash and shoot once, or I could just move to this cover halfway up the board within 6. That's also zoning your board out or zoning your objective out, your home objective. Trigger indirect, and it's also no cover. And I love no cover. Like anytime I can deny cover against an operative, I mean, like a 5-up save, you're giving them a 33 or so % chance of surviving if you give them cover. So cutting that out of the equation is just, it's super valuable. And then moving on, you could go down to the sniper. We could talk about the sniper real quick, I suppose. The sniper. Quick, I got a question. Yeah, go for it, brother. Yeah.
So, all right. So, Kellermorph. So, 2 things. You mentioned the no cover. Huge versus the double retain. Like,
yes.
And like,
like orcs and other awful teams to play against.
Yeah. And like the snipers, like they're good at picking off snipers and snipers nests. Like I've left from the middle of the board, and he's just been like, I've like pushed him up early, and then turning point 3, I go, I'm like, all right, loot or like secure something, like no cover, and then shoot the dude on like your sniper nest, right? Because he's all the way up the board, and like if I go, he gets a double retain. It's like nope, and 5 dice on 2s. Like
love it.
That's brutal.
With rerolls.
Right? Yeah, with rerolls, right? Yeah. Especially if you're slinking them back in the darkness. But the do you take him versus mandrakes? Is what I was going to ask.
Yeah, it's because it's the volume of dice at that point. I think if he was throwing 4 dice on 2s, even I probably wouldn't take him because the 4-up invuln save is just kind of a little weird. It sounds weird. Once again, I hedge my bets. So like if I'm ever doing some quick mental math and I don't actually pull out like a kill team calculator, for instance. I just assume worst case scenario for things, because if those things happen, you need to be prepared for what the result of it is, what the consequence is. So yeah, if he's throwing like 4 dice, for example, yeah, I probably wouldn't take him. I'd go both melee, but he's just too good. He doesn't care about invulns. They only have 8 wounds. The leader's a little trickier, obviously, with the Oubliex, but yeah, it's too good otherwise, man, especially with 3 APL to start matching some of his other guys late game. You can start moving on to his points, indirecting them, or even just moving within 2. And the capacity, like if that guy even once manages to take out 2 models, that could be like the game right there, just on his own. And you have your other agents, you have your other gunners, and that's kind of why I don't fear mandrakes as much with Wyrmblade, because one of our gunners also, or 2 of them realistically, if you take the Weber, which you should be doing, but if you take the Weber and the mining laser, which everyone does for one of your heavy gunner options, you just have volume of dice. You have 2 other guys that are throwing 5 dice on your team. It's basically a guarantee to get some damage through. Not necessarily on a 4-up. I'll give you that. And if they have retains and whatnot, but if somebody were to ask me, what would you rather throw, 4 or 5 dice? I mean, the answer is always simple. 5 dice is just volume. In this game,
5 dice changes a lot of.
Oh yeah. In this game, AP, anything with AP is massive, and anything with a high volume of dice is massive. Those are like the two biggest keys for a really good weapon and a really good operative. So yeah, short answer after all of that, sorry, I would definitely take him into Mandrakes.
Nice. Yeah, I have not done that at all. I've taken the Talon and the Locust into Mandrakes every time I've played them. I played them a lot just because of the recent meta. But yeah, I thought it's like, how could you go wrong with them into the Mandrakes? My thought was always, all right, it kind of gives my team a little more diversity, so they can't just like rely on like the auto retains for all the shooting and stuff, right? And I like that, and also the obscuring, like not having a like you have to kind of set up for the like avoiding the obscuring with the spotlights versus like you can't just obviously you can't put the items on the color morph himself. So that always kind of bothered me. So I was like, I'm just gonna run obviously the Talon, and then the Locust is just so good. He can bait a lot of fights first, especially when like if you catch them in the open and they don't have the rerolls. Like if you're charging in, like I've had it happen plenty of times where they only roll like crit and hit, and you're like, cool,
2 hits,
double parry, and plant kill you. Yeah,
tried and true. I mean, you're not far off, brother. I know you were like, well, I don't actually do what you do, but I was gonna say, hot take, into every single Felgor game I played at LVO, every single one. I just, like I said, that weekend I walked up and I was like, man, I haven't played a ton of Felgor leading up to this. Our local meta doesn't really have any like super competitive Felgor players, so I just was kind of winging it, and I say, you know what, implant feels good, or infiltration feels good, and then for once, I'm going to try to match a team's freak, so to speak. You know, I'm going to say a little millennial slang right there, a little Gen Z slang, whatever. And I took Talon and Locust every single game, and they were hands down my MVPs. I did not. Everyone, dude, Jimmy was blown away. He was like, "Okay, what's the team?" And I'm like, "Here's my team," and it's all very basic. I wasn't doing anything crazy. Like I said, I keep the team very simple. You know, very basic gunners, yada yada. And then he goes, "All right, where are the agents? Kellermorph and who?" Like he just assumed whatever model I had there was the Kellermorph, and I was like, "No, I'm bringing the Talon and the Locust." He's like, no Kellermorph, and like he even says, he's like, oh, that's gonna make this game a little easier for me. But like the problem is, you know, you have to stake him in these matchups against these teams. You know, you have to kind of risk him a little bit, especially against Felgor. You have to get those models, you have to get within 6 or get within 2 even sometimes, and then
a lot of times you're going to kill whatever you're shooting at, which is sometimes the not right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. You know, then they're just like, cool, you killed this guy, I'm going to walk up and kill him back. And it's like, you've lost the model. The only reason I like him into Mandrakes is because of the whole interruption shenanigans. You know, it's really good with them. Like the Get Down, Mr. President. I do use it a lot. I played Kellen a couple weeks back. It was a fun game, but I saw some early aggression happening in the game, you know, and I was like, let me try something. And I went behind a wall. I switched a guy to engage. You know, he didn't think anything of it. He charged in on the Kellermorph, and sure enough, I did. I interrupted him, and, you know, that really shut down a flank for him. When I take the melee operatives into that team, especially with the fight first, the chance of them getting some chip damage in, and it's not just chip damage, it's significant damage into them, is pretty high for me. So I just don't think, in my opinion, the risk versus reward in my games has ever been good. But I mean, trust me, if there's anybody out there that matches like your thought process on like why you took both melee operatives, it's me, brother. Because I just was like, cool, I'm just going to take both my melee guys every game, and it paid off. So I 100% see where your head's at.
People
What's
say
up, brother?
when I say more people like look at you, they're like, are you crazy? Like I was playing I played Rob for my first game on Saturday, and he was like looking for the Kellermorph. He's like, where is it? I'm like, oh, got it. Like, it's but that's what's cool about the team, right? There's like so much flexibility. There's so many different ways to play it. Like, that's why I'm saying like, just like say, hey, these are the few things I want to do in the beginning, and like build your team to do that, right? Like you can always be like, oh, I wish I had the Kellermorph turning point 3 instead of the Locust. Like, of course that's going to happen. Like, but that's not why you're in that situation. You're in that situation because you didn't have the Kellermorph, right? So
Another thing to remember for everyone who's playing against them or playing as these teams, a lot of these models like the Sanctus Sniper, these cult agents and stuff, they don't have some of the same keywords, so they don't perform some of the same actions as other members in your team or in the Wyrmblade team. So that's something to always remember, right? Because not all TAC ops will work for them, and some people have tried to use that, right? So
they can't do free mission actions, for instance. They don't get the free ploy from the leader. They can't get equipped with equipment. Obviously, they can't be operatives eligible for hiding.
Can you imagine if the Talon got the meticulous plan because he's always on conceal. Like that would be absolutely disgusting.
Oh
Like,
man, I mean, the most
I know we're not
basic
talking
one for
fantasy
me,
land, but that's like
dude,
amazing. Yeah.
or like climbing equipment on the Keller Morph,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the blasting charge on the Locust or Talon. Like, forget about it, dude. It'd be awesome. Or just flash visors in general against like scouts and stuff. But I mean, going back to it, I guess all throws back on track. I feel bad for some people at home because I probably yapped a little too long to break down the other like 3 agents because we talked that long about the freaking Kellermorph because he's that good. Take the Kellermorph 9 out of 10 times. Then Dakotah's already on the sniper, so like I'll at least jump in on my opinion. I low-key love this model. Up until LVO, I would probably play him more than the Locust, but now it's more dependent on, the matchup and stuff. I like taking him into Mandrakes for the annoying smoke. I like taking him into Nemesis Claw because their whole thing is I'm obscured and the Sanctus can just take away obscuring. But just be aware of what's happening to your board state at that point. You're losing a big punch on your front line for a really nasty punch on your back line. So the team becomes even more cagey. You can't set up as many threats. Your shotguns start carrying a little bit more weight for your team. Your Kellermorph basically puts the whole team on his back at that point. And the good thing about the Sanctus is, or the sniper, is he does hold down objectives. And it is, I mean, I can't tell you how many times, even just recently, where, I'm just like, hey, lethal 5s, I'm going to switch them to the engage so I get some rerolls here. And all right, that's 9 mortal wounds. And there's tons of teams that, can't do anything about mortals. So,
Nope.
that you don't even need to roll dice at that point. But like I said, you need to be very wary because tons of people, oh, he's a trap. He's not a trap. You're just not aware of his shortcomings. It's a heavy operative. You're going to lose some punch in TP1. You're going to lose some zoning. But what you're going to get in return is a lot of punch back. So your opponent's going to think twice before you just
and board control. You gain
Exactly.
a lot of board control.
There's certain
model.
boards
Yeah.
like where I've only taken them into elites so far, but I could see other matchups.
That's a big
where-
one. That's a big one for sure.
Well, you just pushing
That's
so
probably
much
when you
damage.
think about him the most.
Yeah, for sure. And like there are certain boards where I've set up where I'm like, I'm not going to take him this game, but I wanted to because it just like it's covering like 5 points basically.
There's a couple GW maps that they use regularly at their tournaments that they have
Like
vantages
built into their
in
starting
their
zone.
deployment zones, right?
Stop. I can only get so
Nonsense.
excited, man. Stop. I'm
So sometimes
salivating right now.
sometimes like when you see that kind of thing happen, that might be something that pushes you over the edge to be like, hey, I'm gonna get this. I'm
Too
gonna
good to not take. Yeah.
take Fortify and then dash them up, get them up there, turning point 1. There's
I played G
Some
the first
spice.
ever time. There was a vantage, and I was like, can we deploy on this? And G was like, I think so. And then I walked away, I asked the TO. He's like, yeah, you can. I was like, cool. Well, I got my team. Sweet. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
so, I mean, that's the cool thing about the sniper is it's very obvious when you want to take him. Just short answer, into elites, lean towards him more, lean on him more. Not all the time. And if he's not your play style, obviously, please switch it up. I'm not here to argue with anybody about that, but he should be a big candidate for you. There should be some bells going off in your head. On ITD, not as much. And for reference, this is kind of like a quick breakdown for this model. So on open, against elites, leaning more towards this guy over the other 3 agents. Against hordes, pretty much don't ever look at this model, whether it's open or ITD. Do not look at this model. It's just not worth it. He doesn't have the capacity like the other 2, the Kellermorph and the Locust. The other 2 do to trade 2 for 1 or even continue to go and get, a 3rd or a 4th kill in a next turn if you play it right. So it's just not worth it. This team needs to trade. And then, if you can, or if it's a big deal that your opponent can ignore obscuring, i.e. Nemesis Claw, also think about it. So if you're ever wondering when to take this model, that's
one of the
my
big
breakdown
advantages
this
I think to Wyrmblade is you have 3 models that count, 2 that are actually 3 APL and 1 that counts as 3 APL on points, right? Which I think is a big reason why they're good at playing the primary, right? And they just get that naturally. They don't need to like leech AP or anything, bill or anything like that. The sniper, the reason I've shied away from it, I think you were kind of hinting at, is that he's not getting up the board. So like if you go up early with this team, right, and then you just throw these 3 APL models up the board on their points, you can kind of just make it so they can't come back unless they absolutely blow you out of the water, basically. He doesn't become as much of a problem for the opposing team. Like the Locust, the Kellermorph, Locust is charging, obviously, probably chain
Massive,
charging if you're
yeah.
good. Yeah, right. He's on
Mhm.
points, right? On their points. Kellermorph is moving up the board. He will get on their points, right? Talon, same thing. Sniper just isn't doing that. So that's like one of the reasons I've shied away. But like into elites, like you're saying, you're just blowing him off the board. Like this guy's melting an elite, right? If you do this
Yeah.
and then you give like the auto crit to the Kellermorph, like you're killing 2 to 3 models and 2 activations. Like that's
Yeah,
they're not
you
coming
look
back
at
from
those
that.
two models and you go, each of these can reliably take out or like at least severely wound. The Kellermorph is probably taking something out, to be fair. He's taking out an elite. But like for the sniper, you can at least severely wound the operative, the elite. So it's just so worth it because at that point, like a shotgun can basically finish off one of these guys. So 100%. Yeah, we're totally in agreement on that one, man. And then yeah, the Talon, the reason why the Talon's also super nice is because the Talon's basically getting not really 2-for-1s, but he's also not getting retaliation back with a few of his tricks. So Talon, really good into other melee teams, obviously, and he's surprisingly good into or with infiltration just because of the capacity to move up a board and get some extra distance that your opponent wasn't expecting. Because just like Jason hinted at earlier, he likes charging into points and, getting further up the board and getting a subversive. And for those not in the know and not currently watching the video version of this, I'll just quickly break it down. The reason why this model specifically, we're mentioning that he has a very unique ability where after he performs a charge, not only can he perform a charge with a conceal order, but he can perform a dash action regardless of any other rules, regardless of anything else after the fight. And that's also regardless of if it's engaged or not. So you can charge in and maybe even just hope, hey, I'm going to go into this model. I just want to kind of break its legs or, I just want to parry it out or something. And then I really just need to get onto that back line. I need to tap a point. I need, with my third APL, I need whatever you need. You need subversive, you need gather with this operative, you need, seize defenses. You can finish that fight relatively unscathed, especially with the double hits and then dash further into their back line. So this paired with like a writhing ingress is awesome. He's flying up the board. He's essentially moving, if you think about 11 inches, and he's got like a 12-inch or like a 9-inch threat range. And then in terms of like threatening objectives, I mean, that's like 12, that's, what is that? 3, it's like 11-ish inches, right? So super valuable, but also very niche. So just like the sniper, more niche, but not so much. You can't really go wrong with this model after it's been buffed. The capacity to do like 12 damage to your opponent is big. One thing to keep in mind, which I see a lot of people mess up with this operative, is, like I mentioned earlier, the condition. If you go to strike with a crit and you want to immediately hit with another, die, you can't guarantee 12 damage. But you can guarantee 9. And the reason for that is because it explicitly states you can hit with a crit and then you have to hit with one of your normals. And then if you don't have any normals, sure, go for it. You get a double hit for 12, which is insane. But the fact that it's still so conditional. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would 100% recommend. He gets balanced, so 100% just reroll any of your normal hits, hoping for just a 4-up at that point. And it'll be pretty good.
Let's go.
Yeah, for sure.
That's how you do it. I've thought about that. I was like, 12 wounds, like switch up to engage, charge.
It's just like I said, I like keeping things simple. So if I look at that, and you were saying it earlier, like with Route or like Robin Ransack, you think about it sometimes, you're like, well, I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't want the mental overload of having to do something. It's kind of the similar mindset here. I don't want to have to worry about, man, what if I charge in, I only get I only get 1 crit and a few hits. Then it could be devastating for you if your operative's like, 10 wounds or more. So
he was
just
big
something
when I
to
started
consider.
playing capture into the elves because he's concealed,
yeah, he's
right?
insane. I love him on
he
capture.
Charged, Robin Ransack, dash away, and then it's like, well, now he's in cover. You can't shoot him back.
Yeah, so, especially with the charge while concealed. It's awesome, man. It's awesome.
I also talked about
a sleeper.
One thing I said was like I like putting the 3 APL models on my opponent's points. Like that's obviously strong. But this dude's good at like killing people who aren't on points and getting back onto points. You see that theme with the Locust, like right? Like I just keep saying that because like that's. Like I talk about simplifying it, like that's all I've been doing is like go up early and then just put these 3 APL models on their board. Like what are they going to do? They have invulns, double retains. They could retain a crit. Like they're just difficult to deal with,
Can't beat it.
So typically,
I got one more thing about the talent, real quick, Dakota.
Yeah.
So defensively, so one thing that worked really, really well for me, like my first game playing Wyrmblade, there's a situation where a Mandrake operative, like basically I was like waiting at the activation, at the extra activation. We were trading 1 for 1. And towards the end of the second turning point, I wasn't getting like, he was doing a good job like zoning my talent. So I was like, all right, I want to put this dude next to a barricade on a point, right? Like that, I'm pretty simple minded. Like that's all I want to do. So there's only one operative that could charge him. So I dashed onto the point where I wanted to be. And then I picked that operative as the target of the soul sight. So if he has charged me, right, then you can kill him. So if you're like trying to wait to activate people, especially versus the Mandrakes, you just do that. And like now he can go on that point, but he's only 2 APL. He can move and shoot you, which probably doesn't kill you. And then he's going to get blasted once he does that. I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool. Like probably not the most optimal way of using it, but there's definitely situations where that's.
I think that's pretty good,
defensively.
Man. Yeah, because then they also run the risk of, if you happen to do 9, like if you happen to be charging in with a model that's 9 wounds or less, I mean, he might just die after hitting you one time. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a super niche play, but it can catch people off guard, just like indirect with the Keller Morph, just like this whole team.
Yeah, especially when you're playing the activation game, right? Like you're just leaving them there for the counter punch. You don't see it. You're like, all right, I'm going to throw them up the board, see what they do.
Yeah, and then if you charge somebody on a point with this guy, you can always, if you crit him, you get a stun as well. So you get 2 hits. It's even then you start knocking down AP, so you can tap it be a little easier.
Oh yeah,
a lot of good things about that model. We move on to the Locust here, and we'll go back and we'll touch on the selection process. That's one thing we kind of skipped over because to me this feels like the heart of the team, right? These operatives, I don't know if you ever play Wyrmblade without them. It's awesome.
If you sub them for 2 guys, no, I don't. No,
exactly right. So this, even though these aren't technically the leaders, they kind of are, right?
Oh, every game I play, people go, "Oh, where's your leader?" And I'm like, I'm not trying to be mean, but that's not my leader. And I say again, I'm not trying to be mean, man. That's not my leader. I keep telling you that. They're like, well, if I go there, I can reveal Headhunter. And I'm like, that's not my leader, man. I keep telling you that. Like, he's just, well, why is he so good then? Well, I don't, you tell me, brother. They gave me these models. I'm just playing with them. I just have all these toys in my hand. I don't know what you want me to do with them, man. Like Ricky Bobby, dude. I'm not sure what to do with my hands right now, dude. Just playing the game.
So going over Locust now.
Oh man!
This guy's great. This guy's great.
Yeah. Do you guys prefer, if you were going to take the Talon, or would you guys prefer the Locust?
The Locust water model overall, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I think that unless like there's certain situations where maybe the Talon is like a little stronger, but like such a threat. Like again, we talk about the 5 dice hitting on 2s, 4, 6, lethal 5, like. That's a monster profile. That's a monster profile.
Parry ahead of time, so basically a double parry. Yeah.
He has a tail that can shoot 3 inches.
Yeah.
A little weird, but
fun fact, if you ever have a play where you can move within 3 of the sapper on Brood Brothers and he's near the icon bearer, don't shoot him because you'll kill the sapper. Like that's great. But then he gets to plant his friggin' bomb for free and blow it up for free. And that's not that, man. I think the first time playing against Brood Brother, I didn't know you could do that. So
it sounds like you learned
where Brood Brothers hurt you.
Yeah, right. It was rough. But anyways, he's got the silent shot too, so that's like also interesting. Like
catch people off guard. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And you can like cover points and like move dash, like shoot like a guardsman that's like on like a forward point, and then you have your Keller Mortis or Locust chilling up there, and he's probably going to charge and double kill if you get initiative. So it's always fun.
Oh yeah. To add on to that, because I agree with 100% everything Jason's saying, like most things that we've both said at this point, I guess. Just in terms of like on paper, for those of you that are thinking about picking up this team in the near future or have these models or whatever, to simplify it, this model, you want to take him into teams that are heavy with melee. He's a great counterpunch into them. He can really catch some people off guard. Into hordes, I would take him into most things that don't have a way to interrupt, don't have a way to kind of negate some damage. And I wouldn't take him into Vet Guard because of in-death atonement. It's a trap. You charge in, you kill one guy, but you don't actually. So
It's my favorite thing.
yeah. So going back to what Jason said, where he's like, yeah, he's really good for getting 2-for-1s. I would agree almost all the time, right? And I would 100% agree with your statement on he's better than the Sanctus 100% or the Talon 100%, except for in that weird niche case, right? Because the Talon goes in, kills a guy, then what does he do? He just dashes away regardless of what happened to the in-death atonement model. So, you're not just getting trapped there. That's the biggest thing with this team. You don't want your agents to just kind of fall flat. You don't want them to just a lot of teams have that one guy, like for example, I'll just bring up a quick one, like a Brood Brother Knife Fighter. That model's nothing insane. He's deceptively good in melee. He's got some cool little tricks with his mortal wounds, but at the end of the day, that model's going up, maybe charging in 2 guys, but he has no fight twice. He has no weird, well, if I kill this guy, now this guy's minus APL, nothing like that. So that model's just going in and killing one model, and that's his job. Or, he's going in, tapping in point, killing a model, et cetera, et cetera. Your agents can't do things like that. They can't afford to just walk up to one model, even if it's important. They can't just walk up to this one model. Well, I like this model. It's nice and shiny, and you painted it well, and I want to take it out because it bothered me in my last game that I played as intercessors. It doesn't matter. With these guys, you need to squeeze every ounce of efficiency, utility, and use out of them. You need to figure out the best optimal play. You need to keep them alive at all costs. They cannot be operatives that you just give away. If your opponent's just charging them TP2 when they get initiative, or if they get initiative and they're just dying and there's no counterplay to that, it's just a matter of, well, now I get to kill this model that charged onto my side. I promise you that is not a good trade, no matter what. These models cannot afford to just get traded like that. So just something to keep in mind.
Something after the first tournament I was at when we were playing Wyrmblade, and it was a good point. These models usually are my last activations of Turning Point 2. I'm not leading with these models. I mean, if there's a play where I get the Keller Morph up the board, I'm going to take out
like a Writhing Ingress or something.
There's something where you're just going to
destroy.
Non-reciprocal threat. You're just going to crush a bunch. You're going to make a play that wins you the game, right? Because sometimes those pop up, right? But not usually. They're usually my last activation Turning Point. Some of my last activations Turning Point 2.
And they're bonuses, right? Like if you get that early, if you get that early aggression, it's a bonus. You're probably sitting there when you get those, you're rubbing your hands together. You're all right, cool. Well, I guess I'm opening up with this model
gives
now.
Me a triple charge to the Locust early, versus a guard team. Like people aren't doing that usually. But if you get it early, it's fine. But even then, you're kind of when I've gotten that, it's Turning Point 3. It's not Turning Point 2. So I think that's important.
And that'll single-handedly. Once you do that, you're even your opponent kind of looks at the board and they're like, okay, well, that's game. That's
the dagger. Yeah, Turning Point.
It's insane.
Less models, you've killed 2 models and you tie up a third, so you've just taken
and hopefully you're on a point, like you mentioned earlier. Yeah. Especially if you're on a point, you're like, oh, come on, man.
One thing that I'm always looking at when I'm playing, when I'm playing against them, whether I'm playing Vet Guard, whether I'm playing Intercession, whatever I'm playing, I'm always looking to kill these models, right?
Everyone is.
It doesn't matter. I think that's one thing that you also have to remember as a Wyrmblade player is that people know that this model needs to die, right? So they will do extra and more to kill them. So sometimes it's better to play a little reserved with them.
Oh yeah.
They zone
so that they
so
don't just
hard.
die.
They zone so hard. That's when the main advantage is. And I think that I talk about I love the shotguns. I love that their 3/3 shotguns with the rerolls are just they're so good because you push those models up early already. You can lead with them Turning Point 2. Yeah, especially into guard teams. You walk up, you can kill 2 models, right?
Your shotguns with rerolls, even against an elite. If you and like I said, you want to take away cover whenever you can. So getting within 2 of models is, it sounds basic and it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how often I play games and my opponent's like, well, I think I'll just stay here, and I'm like, well, I have cover from that shot. Yeah, I know, but I think I'd like to go over here afterwards. And I'm like, okay, you just gave me, I said, I could be wrong on this number, but you're like, okay, you just gave me a 30+% chance to survive on top of whatever I had. Thank you. But yeah, those shotguns, even into elites, you're just here's 6 damage, here's half your health. Or sometimes if they mess up, you're like, cool, here's 9 damage. You're like, what did you just hit me with? You're like, shotgun. And watch this. Here's another one.
Throw one activation away because they're GA2, and 2 dorks who have already probably gotten up the board and like looted or secured a point early, right? You lead with that, right? So usually like someone does like their big play turning point 2, and then you have like a counter punch. What do? Kill 2 of the dorks. Now you have 4 gunners, your leader, and these 2 cold operatives just chilling. Like, that's an insane amount of threats. And that's why you don't have to throw them away. Like, you just don't need to. There's so many other options and good plays are usually available to you. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Like, there is another option besides running this model up the board. You really want them to be like cleanup crew. It's like, I don't want to say you scale well as the game goes on, but like you should be trading.
We're using league terms now. Oh, no.
We're not Colts. We're not Colts.
But I think that's just like an interesting way of like playing with them. It's just like holding them back. But I think like we talked about, like that's the right way of doing it, right? You don't need to throw them away. And using Writhing Ingress to set up the non-reciprocal charge for this guy, or like using the Killer Morph to pop back and forth between walls, like his long range profile is still good.
It's not bad.
Especially with the rerolls, right? Four dice.
I took out one of Dakotah's operatives at the little RTT we played a couple months back on Beta Decima with that.
Fucking Beta Decima.
He was like, "What does it do?"
Fun game, though.
Yeah, it was a fun game, but he's like, "What does it do? Does it do like 2-3 long range?" I was like, "No, it's still 3-4." And I had a crit. And I was like, "Yeah, you're just dead." He's like,
"I love giving the long range.
Why are you not shooting long range all the time?" I was like, "Well, because the short range is insane, but yeah, the long range ain't bad, you know." It's
Especially when you give it the auto crit, that just becomes like a scary profile.
That's exactly what I did against Dakotah.
That's damage coming through, right? Like most likely. So interesting.
I had a great game to take out my frustrations and anger on Wyrmblade this past weekend. It was during a practice game beforehand, and I was able to use the demo mine and kill 4 operatives, one of which was the Keller Morph on turning point 1 on Into the Dark. It was amazing.
One more thing
you, baby. I'm gonna go cry.
For me.
I know we've talked a lot about these operatives, but the Locust just even more abilities, right? I've not used it too often, but I like it on like the open boards when you can like push it up against the door. The Quicksilver Strike.
So
you can, early move dash and throw it up there, and like I almost never use it, but like when you again you just zone people, you're like they're not going to run in, they're not going to give it to you, but like just to be like you can't be in these 3 inches, like that's kind of strong, you know.
Not only that, it's not to jump in, but once again, I mean, this is one of those like conditional things that actually works in our favor. You know, the charges and everything are actually pretty nice to kind of work around. You know, people think, 3 inches isn't that much, and, whatever. Maybe my girlfriend says that sometimes, but, you'd be surprised what you can do with that, especially on ITD. It's pretty nice, man. So,
yeah, it's about how you use it.
Percent with everything.
Trust me, I know.
I mean, I will say
you just like run in, charge, kill a dude, charge it to another one. Like that's the thing. Now it's getting crazy. Like it's cool. And like this dude is great with implant. Amazing with the 5 dice for implant.
He's just an implant battery. And for those of you, I feel like we have been doing a bit of a disservice to the more casual crowd. To those of you that aren't reading along at home, just real quick, why we've been saying this model is so great. It can fight twice natively, and it has, if you're familiar with Legionary's Corn ability, Perpetual Aggression, where they can consolidate 3 inches after a charge, so they can continue to charge into
Perpetual Aggression, I think it's called.
Yeah. Wait, did I say perpetual?
I know. I just remembered it now.
Oh, you're good. No worries. You're good, brother. I probably got it wrong. Doesn't matter. But the ability that allows the operative to consolidate into combat after it's already done so, this operative has that natively as well. So it just has a ton on its stat card here. It can parry first. It has duelists. So that means there's a few times where not a few times. There's tons of times where your opponent, you charge into a guy that's maybe only thrown 4 dice, and like Jason said earlier against Mandrakes, they might only get 2. And then you're like, cool, I got all hits with rerolls. I'm just going to double parry. I'll implant you for 1. That's fun. And then I'm just going to kill you, And so it can consolidate 3. So it can charge a full 8. Then after that, it can charge another 3. And that charge is free. It can fight up to twice. It can consolidate a 3rd time. This model is insane with things like that. The Quicksilver Strike is awesome. The list goes on. I will say in terms of matchups, because I know we've kind of been slacking a bit on what they do well into. If you couldn't tolerate this model is a melee monster, take it into other melee teams. I wouldn't take it as much into elites. Everyone says they love him into elites. He can 100 to 0 elites. I get that. If it works for you, once again, please continue to do so. If you like the way it plays for you, please do so. I am not a fan of how the combat works always, because most of the time it means my models getting their legs broken as well, especially against elites. So if I have to walk in and I maybe mess up and I have to chip down the model with only hits, or maybe the model gets to just a scratch one, whatever the case, I don't like my agents to take any damage. So the sniper is good for that, the Keller Morph's good for that. But if it works for you into Nemesis Claw, I would definitely take the Locust. I would say between him and the Sanctus Sniper, you're about 50-50, and it's just board dependent. If it's ITD, take the Locust. If it's open, maybe take the Sniper, unless you see a really good staging point for the Locust. And and then the other matchups that it's a guarantee into Elves, and then also into hybrid Horde. So Kazarkin, Novitiates. I will say into Novitiates, I tell my opponents every time, I've played tons of Novitiate players at top tables before, and I tell them when I point at that model, if they haven't played against that model before, I don't know what it is about Novitiates specifically, but especially Novitiates, I tell them, if you let this model consolidate and kill 2 models and tie up a third, it will be game over. It will be. I don't know, something about it. I've never seen a Novitiate player come back from that. You might be able to. You might be, one of those crazy Novitiate players listening right now and thinking, well, I could do it. Sure. You never know. But I've gotten it tons of times, and every time they set it up, I'm like, you poor soul. You have no idea what's about to come to you. So just to give you guys some context. And the Hordes, maybe second guess it, like we said earlier. But that's my take on pretty much. I feel like
embarrassing thing I did with this guy. G watched me do it with Gellerpox. So again, I'm bad at kill team. Remember that. You can't implant the Gellerpox bugs, right?
Oh, dude. So you're not bad, dude. You're not bad. I got caught with that too. Don't worry.
Like waited 2 turning points, like super slow. Like I'm just shooting the Hulks. And I got this line. I was like, here we go. I measured it out, everything. I'm like, charge, fight. We're going to implant this dude. Charge, fight, implant this dude. Charge, tie up one of your glitchlings. And on their furthest back point, right? Exactly what I'm saying I'm trying to do, right? I'm like, this is God play, right? This is en passant mate in chess, right? Nope. Can't do it. You can't you can't implant the bugs. But that's a cool thing you could do. In the guard teams, how do you you could do that? I mean, you're probably taking seek and destroy, but even into
it's an option, which is
not
fun
mandrakes.
to have.
That's cool to be able to go, I kill 2 of your models and I put 2 points on implant. You might get this guy next, but that's a huge swing. And they still have to deal with the model. So I think that's
agreed.
Something to always look out for as I don't know. I think it's a cool way to use the model.
That's definitely fair.
Yeah.
So going back to the operatives, I know that you, Anthony, you said that. Okay, there. I know that you said that you typically take the gunner, the mining laser gunner, and then the Weber, right?
Yeah.
Jason, does that change for you, or is that your standard typical loadout as well?
You mean I always call them Weber, the stubber, the heavy. We're talking about the heavy gunners, right?
Yeah.
I always take the seismic mechanic and mining laser. I've been thinking more and more take the stubber into guard teams for sure. I think that makes sense. But I love the 6 dice potential blast for finishing people off. That's
lethal 5 on good. ITD.
Yeah, lethal 5 on ITD.
Right there with you, brother.
Right, I love that. And then I always think who am I going to give the auto crit to? This guy, the seismic cannon gets the locks. He's got the close range 4/4 3-up P1 stun profile.
Yes.
You give him an auto crit, so you're hitting all 4 dice. You're guaranteeing
P1.
the crit. Yeah, P1. Yeah. That's basically 5 dice, right? It's not 5 dice AP1, but it's 5 dice. So I like that guy, but I see the stubber he's got ceaseless, and then you get the rerolls on top of it. That's really good. That's you're probably getting 5 dice on that, 4 dice at least.
Yeah, you get to reroll the ones, and then you get to use your ploy to reroll the 2s. Yeah, to reroll 2s and stuff.
Yep.
Mining laser though, 5 dice hitting on 4s, 5, 6 AP1. That's when I first time I read that, I was like, that's a typo. They didn't just give him a 5 dice plasma profile with 6-inch movement, but they did. Yep.
Yeah. Games Workshop does some funny things sometimes, Is that typically so? Anthony, you're saying you take the Weber over anything else? Or do you take the 2 gunners or?
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw earlier, I was kind of rubbing my hands together because this is like one of my favorite topics I used to kind of debate with people about. Because like I said, there was a time and place where, I was a bit more opinionated. Nowadays, I just kind of, if you want to run this, man, go for it, man. Let's see how you do in your local meta. Tell me how, report back, But like I said, I'm a big fan of just like, if it's simple or if it's dumb, but it works, then it's not dumb, just like do it. So for the most part, I take a pretty static list with this team. Some people might think that's kind of, counterintuitive to the game, like the gameplay of the team or like the motif, but where my flexibility comes from is how I play them. So just to break it down, yeah, I always take the neophyte leader. Obviously you have to. I take him with the power pick just for the rending. I understand the math might work out better for other hordes and because of the rerolls. To be honest, rule of cool for me. It's a pick. I'm a big fan.
It looks cool.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of Deep Rock Galactic. I like their whole mining motif with this team. So it's like cool power pick. It looks dope. Then in terms of the weapon, a lot of people, and even myself, I used to take the Master Crafted because of the the balanced and the lethal 5. It's cool, but 2-3 damage sometimes isn't enough. And I can tell you on multiple occasions with the bolt pistol on 3s, with the rerolls is pretty good, man. I mean, you just have to look at Scions and how good their shooting is. It's on 3s.
I tied Scions this weekend with Jonathan Marquis.
I mean, think about it, right? How reliable were the Scions shooting?
3-4, you're getting
it was stupid.
Like,
his grenade launcher.
It's not
grenade launcher +1 APL. Every turn, I'd have a dead guard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like I want to say it's like with the rerolls, it makes it so much better. Like that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
3-4. Oh, it's just like it's good.
Yeah, this guy's not bad. Like if you're looking at late game an elf that maybe charged onto your back point and like you're out of shotguns or something and your leader's sitting there and maybe it's mandrakes and they have the fight first, so you don't want to fight with him. You'll be surprised how much damage you could do with this guy, especially if you haven't nominated anybody late game for like a coiled serpent. He does it on himself because of the free abilities that the leader has, Shadow Vector. He gives himself a crit with the bolt pistol. It doesn't give him P1 or anything, but a crit's harder to stop and it does more damage. Going down the list. Oh, go ahead, brother.
I say leader, like, so you usually always take those 2 loadouts, you're saying.
Yeah, but that's just me. I said with everything, I'm aware that, there might be better plays for stuff. The web pistol, I could see it into like Gellerpox for sure.
But I think that's a big one, like web pistol and the Gellerpox. I would consider Mastercrafted into Thogor, but I think I'm probably just taking the bolt pistol just to
you just need raw damage.
Great way to shoot someone and like leave them on a few wounds. But I take the chainsword a lot.
Sure.
I like the ceaseless. And
I think we had this conversation.
Yeah, and that's it. It's like there's so many ways to do it, but I just want to throw that out there. Like this is a specific operative where if I'm running him with the board and charging, I need him to get hits to score Robin Ransack, or I need him to implant or something. So my thought is
you need the rerolls. You need more
for
reliability.
10 wound teams, you're taking the power pick. Anyone who's like 9-10 wounds, like you're taking
guard, you're taking the chainsword. I 100% agree with you. There's times I've walked up and I'm like, man, I just need one crit to go through, and I literally get like one hit after rerolls with the leader on 3s. I get you, brother. I'm right there with you. It's just, that's the beauty.
I think it is the coolest though, without a doubt. Because
for sure.
It's a power pick, right? That's pretty.
I don't know. I think it's kind of weird, right? Because on paper, a chainsword sounds like badass, and I come from Gears too, so like I also loved like the whole Lancer. It had a chainsaw on the front. It's like, so things with chainsaws, it was like GW just looked at it like, how can we make a gun or like a sword more badass? We're gonna throw a chainsaw on it. But I don't know. I feel like it's just saturated at this point because I've been in this like whole hobby and shit for too long. So. When I see a chainsword, I'm like, all right, sure, it's a chainsword. Power pick, though, you're looking at that like, dude, that's kind of cool.
It's not just a pick, it's a power pick. That's even
exactly. Yeah, I have like, I did a little like highlights by the little power source and stuff. But I mean, not to yap on too long. The Kellermorph, obviously, so you have your choice going down. You have your choice of 13 operatives for the rest of your loadout. The agents, you can take 2 of them. They don't count as your leaders, obviously, and they count as 2 selections for your team. So you're going to be down to 12 operatives total, including your leader. in the 2 agents. But we've talked about those. We've talked about when you're supposed to take those. In terms of your main force, you're looking at you can and you need to take at minimum 4 Brood Adepts. So those are just standard guardsman profiles. They don't have anything crazy going on. They don't have any extra movement or anything. No weird like arm,
You both said that you
attack.
guys like taking shotguns on them, right?
Yeah, don't overthink it here, guys. When you're thinking about what to take on these guys, like I was saying about Aiden, he's asking, hey, is there any play for the auto guns? No, they hit on 4s. They do 2-3 damage. The shotguns hit on 3s with your rerolls. It is not uncommon for me to just get all hits very often. And when you're throwing the equivalent after rerolls, if you think about it, you're throwing about 6 dice with a guy, then you're throwing about 6 dice with another guy. Not really, you don't have 6 attack dice, but you have 6 chances for some hits. Even into an elite, you could break some kneecaps with that. You could walk up
super
to
well on the mandrakes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Walk
dude,
up,
it's insane.
double tap, and now you have 4 APL on a point. And
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
And then a lot of times, since these are your most expendable models on the team, these are your most forwardly deployed models, right?
So why not have shotguns?
Exact shotguns.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
You got it. So, yeah, you take the shotguns. If you take the auto guns and you're one of those people that says, oh man, it's kind of cool to proc a crossfire, congrats to you. Go play Brood Brothers now. We'll move on. In terms of
auto gun like meta out there, someone like post and respond.
Let us know because I'm missing out on that too, man. Yeah.
Well, actually,
let us know. Yeah. Well, actually, but going to the gunners, you have 3 choices for your regular gunners. Keep in mind, these aren't your heavy gunners. It sounds obvious, but some people forget. For your regular gunners, you have 3 options. You can take, and you have to take 2, or you don't have to, but you can take up to 2 of these. You can take a flamer, a grenade launcher, and a Weber. The grenade launcher is like a guarantee. Dakotah and I were talking about it this weekend, though. We're like, our grenade launcher never does anything.
Fucking awful.
At the end of the day, listen, at the end of the day, an AP1 weapon with the capacity for blast and a blast that does 2-4, because most grenade launchers do at minimum 2-4. They're not like regular frag grenades that do 2-3. On ITD, even with the lethal 5-up, is just too good. Even if he doesn't go off, you need him for the capacity of. Yeah, you need them for the capacity.
Once every 5 games, they're good.
Right.
Yeah,
I think what? One thing to note is the 2-4 profile. Like if you use the guaranteed crit with the rerolls, like
and you catch a blast, that's
like
nasty.
That's a nice that's a good profile. Like that's long range blast is probably killing 7-8 wound models.
For sure. Yeah. I agree completely.
Yeah.
And then for your secondary, tons of people talk about the flamer. The only time I ever thought about taking it, because it hits on 2s versus the Weber, which hits on 3s, and I'll break down the weapon profiles in a second. The only time I would ever consider it was previously into Harlequins, but at the end of the day, neither of these models, the Weber and the flamer, because they both do 2-2 damage, neither of them are really swinging for the fences here and hoping for a kill like your other gunners are. So you might as well walk out of it with something. And the Weber has lethal 5-up, and it has stun, more importantly. So you're walking out of these going, well, you know what? I didn't kill this guy. I did, at worst, I did 2 damage, or maybe you did nothing, but at least you have a minus APL for your troubles. The only time I could see some play for the flamer is obviously into Gellerpox. It just makes sense with the little guys. But even then, the Weber is just so great into their big guys. He walks up, he gets them for a lethal 5-up on a stun. It's really good. And there's been quite a few times where with the lethal 5-up and the rerolls with the gunner, with the Weber, I've done a surprise. He's done more damage than my grenade launcher in a lot of games.
They push a lot of damage.
Yeah, exactly. I'm walking out of some.
It's 5 dice.
And
exactly
5 dice.
All those or not.
And it's 6 inches, so chances are you're gonna be one of those people that's like, well, I might as well just get this guy within 2, so you're not retaining. Then your opponent rolls their saves and they say, okay, they come out the other side. They go, okay, what's the damage? You're like, well, these are all crits here, so that's 6 damage. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And then. So that's my choices. I would say 9.999% of the time, take the Weber. Don't overthink it. Take the Weber. You will not regret it. And then going into the
I take the flamer.
Yeah, go for it, bro.
To the dark into hordes, not into Gellerpox, but into a horde.
For the flamer.
Yeah, I just like.
Yeah, I could see it for sure.
Yeah, I like the idea as like a follow up to like a potential like frag grenade or something like that. There's like some like plays you could do there, but I mean, I just like the idea of having like hitting on 2s with the lethal 5 and then like obviously you get it and you have torrent, so it's like just another like AoE threat that you have. But I then same thing, like you can't really go wrong. Do I get like the natural like built-in lethal 5 stun gun where I'm rolling 5 dice with like rerolls? Like that's pretty good. Like I don't think you can go wrong. I just like hitting on the 2s versus the 3s into teams with more models. That's it.
Yeah, for sure. Then go into the heavy gunners. You have 3 options again. There's a big theme here of 3 choices. You can only take 2 for each one again. The heavy gunners, everyone, it always kills me when people ask questions like this. They go, "Oh, your heavy gunners have 8 wounds, right?" Or they have, an extra wound. I'm like, "No, they're nothing. They have the same amount of wounds. They're just bigger. So they have all the disadvantages of being bigger, and they have none of the advantages of being bigger. It's just, it is what it is."
In a 32 mil base, which for some board in hiding, they can get just past 9 inches up the board.
Yeah, no, that stuff I do like. To be fair, it's just it's like the little things of like, well, they have to have 8 wounds, right? Because my heavy gunner has 8 wounds. You're like, no, he doesn't. But regardless, you have 3 choices. You have the heavy stubber, which off my head is 5 on 4s, ceaseless and fusillade, 3/4 damage. Then the heavy gunner, I'm gonna nail these. You don't have to scroll down. I got this. Don't worry. Thanks for the assist, though. Thanks for the assist. Play this team too long, man. Then you have the mining laser, who's 5 on 4s again. Like we were talking about earlier, has an insane profile though. Has 5/6 damage, AP1. And then you have the seismic cannon, which has 2 profiles. Has this long range profile, so that long range profile is 6 dice, like we mentioned earlier, on 4s though. So it hits like most of your other gunners. 2/2 damage. It has blast 1. A lot of things on this team have blast 1, or only other thing is blasting charge, but still 2 important ones have blast 1, but importantly it has stun, so that's pretty nice. Like Jason was saying earlier on ITD, it's really nice for the lethal 5 up, with the rerolls and everything is awesome. And just to clarify for some folks, because this always comes up, Wyrmblade have their Colt Ambush rerolls, which once you've switched from conceal to engage, or if you're shooting and at the start of your activation you weren't visible to any of your opponent's operatives, you get a reroll of 1 number, and you can decide that after you've rolled. So for example, like ceaseless, if you just happen to whiff and just roll all 1s on a shooting attack, you can reroll those. The beauty of ITD, or just of blast in general paired with Colt Ambush, is you can perform Colt Ambush and it procs on every single shooting attack in that blast. So if you happen to get 3, 4, or even 5, or who knows how many you could get, if you get
and that was updated in the FAQ.
Yes, they have also clarified that in the FAQ. You'll get the Colt Ambush and the Coiled Serpent, which once again, calling back to what Jason said earlier, does apply for every single one of those. So you'll get the rerolls, you'll get the auto crit. It's really nice. And then also going back to the seismic cannon, my favorite thing is the deceptiveness of it, because you tell your opponent their profiles, but they still kind of don't clock it. Then you say, don't get within 6 of this model. They go, why is that? You're like, check this out. 4 on 3s, 4/4 damage, P1 and stun. With rerolls, this operative is very reliable. And like Jason said, again, I'm just going to keep quoting him. He's a great candidate for Coiled Serpent, because you're just guaranteeing the P1. That model puts in work. It is deceptively strong. And this, importantly, is probably one of the biggest results of the buff. You're going to see the most results of the buff. You're going to see the biggest payoff of the 6-inch move granted to the heavy gunners with this guy most of the time, because this guy's going to really get up the board late game. If that's, that's how I tend to play these guys. I play them a little later. They tend to show their hand, but he's going to have the capacity, especially with climbing equipment, to just fly off a vantage, get within 2 of a model, or zone out their cover from, a flank, and do a surprising amount of damage. And a lot of times just guarantee a kill. Before with heavy, it wasn't always that prevalent, but now, because he can be more mobile, especially with climbing equipment, this model is amazing. So to clarify which choices, mining laser, seismic cannon, 9 out of 10 times. Like Jason said, there is some play with the heavy stubber. I've personally taken it. Most of the time, though, you're probably giving the opponent some cover with the heavy stubber just because of how you play with him. So it's not as reliable. But you know what? If it's flavor, or I personally like the way it looks more. I like guns with big old belts of ammo coming out of them. So I don't blame you for taking the heavy stubber. It's badass still.
Appreciate it. Go with the mining theme still with that mining laser, seismic cannon.
You can't go wrong.
The leader, so we talk about 2 abilities a lot. I've mentioned Slink in the Darkness, which lets you, we'll get there eventually, I'm sure, but lets you flip that to Conceal. And then Coiled Serpent, which are other tactical ploy that you're going to be using a lot. And that's like the auto crit. You have to use it when they activate, and it has to be on their, it's on their first attack. So the leader can give those out for free. So if he has visibility of the neophyte operatives and not the cult agents, you get that for free. So when you're setting up your leader, one thing you always have to think about is, who does he have visibility of? You're trying to maximize that, of course, right? And like I said, I like to use this guy as like a counterpunch with the chain sword or the power pick, right? He's a good way to follow up like turning points 3 and 4. The leader is. But I always think if I have to bias my leader somewhere, I want him looking at my seismic cannon because he's most likely going to be the target. So like if you have to make that choice, like turn your model a certain way, those small decisions, like just like some guidance to kind of simplify that choice for you.
People at home can't see it, but I have a small tear coming down my eye. That's beautiful. These are
that's
things
the stuff playing Kill Team though that like separates. Like I would say, like when I was playing casually,
it's a Hollywood tear. Like get some water.
that kind of positioning though, like that's the stuff you like. I never used to think about that. I remember like at Worlds last year, like I missed an Overwatch shot on like someone playing Breachers because I didn't turn my model 20 degrees. Like it comes more naturally now, but that's the stuff like. Just knowing to think that way. All right, the head's just got to draw a line to that person. Perfect, we're good.
Especially with Wyrmblade, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, especially with the leader, yeah, for sure. And like, there's usually a good spot to put him, but I like him with the seismic cannon because he's probably getting something.
Smart.
Yeah. So, do you guys use hiding every single game?
Yeah, you need to. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much starting every game with 3 AP CP. Now, what about unquestioning loyalty?
Oh, I love this one.
You want me to go first, or you want to go first, brother?
Can I go first? I'm really excited.
Yeah. Go for it. You seem enthusiastic. Let's see it.
So I said before, like, don't throw the cult agents away, blah, 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 blah. So, all right. Right-thing ingress, like, one of the things I was able to set up was go up early with the Keller Morph, right? Like, get a, Felgord, like, get up and, like, blast an operative, right? Just, like, blow them off their, like, forward point, like, pre-move dash, do the no cover indirect move, like blast a dude. You're probably going to frenzy that model. Now have the locus within 3. Move, he has to be engaged, but you move, dash him, get him within 3 of the Keller Morph, but outside of like counter charge range from like one of the Felgor operatives. So 1 or 2 things can happen. They win initiative. They're going to go ahead and go after your Keller Morph. Most likely that's what I would do. Or they're going to, most likely that's what they do, right? But now the locus he can be the person who does the unquestioning loyalty act. None of the other like agents can do that. So he has that option to do it. Same thing, you can use it with the Talon. I've used it or where I've had the Talon go up the board, smoke an elf, they go to kill him. Now this dude just, he runs in and like he's moving. So you don't even have to put him 3 inches there because you can dash back or to like the side with the Talon. So it gets pretty crazy. Again, niche plays, but like, I love the idea of like having that option. Like if I see a good alpha strike, all right, I'm not just throwing the Keller Morph away to like a melee horde. Like I have an option to like swing them around. But that's pretty cool. I haven't really used this one too much because when I don't have that, I played so like conservatively with like my cult agents that I haven't needed to use it yet, but I would love to hear if you had to do playing Felgor 3 times at LVO. I'm sure you got used a couple times.
Well, they have a few guys that can, or they have a guy that can fight twice, and then they also have the unrelenting attack with the Vandal. So I mean, I used it a fair amount, but I was just going to piggyback off what you said. You just need to watch out for fight twice. The moment they have that, this ploy just becomes irrelevant. Because they kill the first model, and you're just throwing away models at that point. But I agree with everything Jason said.
So the charge here can be an 8-inch charge, right?
Oh yeah.
I haven't used the full range, but I think that's interesting where you could really like put your locus in an interesting spot if you use him, and you can almost like springboard him forward. So now he's moved. Potentially, like they said, like you get almost like 6-7 inches if you think about how big it could be with like 232 mil bases, like up the board further. And now it's like. That's not good for your opponent. That's like a bad situation to be in.
Yeah. And that kind of just real quick as a callback, that's kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the Locust, where like it's conditional, but it works in your favor. The Locust is interrupt charge, where if you move within 3 of him, he can perform a charge. Quicksilver Strike. He can perform a full charge. It's not 3 inches. So it procs within 3, but that's very important because like for Deadly Ambush with Corsairs where they can interrupt, they can even now, if the operative's ready, they can switch to engage and charge you and interrupt. Their charge is 3 inches. So you can game that around like barricades and stuff. So you can go, well, I'm going to get within 3, but you could try to interrupt, but guess what? You still can't make it around this. The Locust.
And you can't make it over traversable either.
Exactly. The Locust, the moment you're within 3, can navigate every sort of barricade that's around, every sort of door that you proc Quicksilver Strike in front of to perform a full charge and get to you. So, like Jason was saying, just
Ew.
once again, it's just great.
When I look at the team, I also say ew because they're all bald.
And then if you get a kill with that, like gets a charge again. It's so unfair.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy. I love it.
Yeah.
All these Smeagol guys. All right, sorry. I'll try to be nice. Strategic ploys. Let's go over since we pretty much went over. Slink into Darkness, Coiled Serpent. Quickly you can change an engage order to a conceal for Slink in the Darkness. We've talked about it a lot.
Yeah,
and then Coiled.
Just real quick for that one, drop a heavy gunner in an advantage, blast the dude, flip him back to conceal for free potentially. Like, oh,
right.
come on. And I found
so
that
nice
I have a
of you.
lot of extra CP.
Stop giving everyone tips.
Yeah. Right? Like, don't be afraid to use this on your cult agents. Like, I know it's like, oh, I guess, but the CP, I should get it for free. Like, I'm just getting hyped up using it for free on like the seismic cannon. But like, I've always had extra CP at the end of my games. I'm never like starved for CP. So just something to consider. Like, even though you can get it for free, like, don't be afraid to use it. It's more so like once you use it, you can't use it on someone else, right? That's the real downside. It's less about getting it for free. Yeah, exactly.
So hiding as well. So everyone can remember, hiding is not usable on the cult agents. I know we've said it before, but just make sure. You cannot forward deploy a cult agent, okay?
This is a good springboard, though, into the strategic ploys because you have 3 ploys you can only use once per game. So that's like, those are like some of the bigger decisions you're going to have to make. Like hiding, you're going to use hiding, but then you have to pick who you're going to use. But then meticulous plan and right thing ingress. I haven't seen a situation where I would use one with shadows yet.
I used to always use it. Yeah,
there's so many teams with that like more obscure now. I could totally see how in like a different meta it was like probably broken. And then Crossfire, like I've never used. Maybe I was considering using it as the Patriarch the first time I played against Brood Brothers, but if I could even get the shot on the actual Patriarch itself. But Meticulous Plan and Right Thing Ingress are both once per game, so that's just something to realize. Like, am I using Meticulous?
So what are those?
Let's do that
because not everyone's watching. Not everyone's watching.
Can I break these down? This is my favorite part of this team.
You got
it, like their ploys and stuff. So outside of their like innate ability, which is the entire team can switch from conceal to engage in the first turn, and the Cult Ambush, which is the rerolls of 1 number. Now in the ploys, you have you're basically living and dying off of 1 ploy in strategic ploys, and then Writhing Ingress is a nice addition. So just going off of it, the biggest one that everyone needs to keep an eye on is Meticulous Plan. So Meticulous Plan, what it is it allows you to do mission actions for 1 less action point, and that's big, right? You have to remember it's not free; it's minus 1 action
conceal.
Point. Yeah, exactly.
That's important to realize.
You have to be concealed. And it has to be a neophyte. And here's the thing. I see a lot of people bring this up a lot. They go, well, couldn't you pair this with the tack ploy, Slink into Darkness? So you come in, you throw an aid, then you switch him to conceal, and then now he's concealed, he gets to perform the mission action still. The reason why, and I've seen this a ton, so that's why I kind of wanted to bring some attention to this. The reason why is because it's at the end of your activation that you perform Slink into Darkness. So your APL is now exhausted. This operative has activated. So you cannot do that. But either way, it's really good early on. On ITD, you're going to be popping this. Maybe not every time, but if a board has a lot of doors that are kind of leading to flanks, and I have to deploy guys in separate rooms, this basically just becomes button team. Like I hit Meticulous Plan and I'm opening every door possible.
Yep.
Once again, cannot do it with the agents, and but it's still awesome because this paired with hiding, which we'll detail very quickly, but this paired with hiding is kind of why a lot of people have problems with this team, because they say that the team has a big presence with scoring points early on Dude,
Yeah, this is what makes that icon bearer that I was hyping up on Into the Dark so strong, right?
Yep.
You move him up, he opens the door, he goes into a room, and then on like loot, really, I think it shines on security capture, to be honest with you, where like you just wait, he's your last activation, and then you can like move dash him through a door, or like you can move dash him secure point, he's 3 APL there, they don't have anyone unengaged to kill him. Like there's so many different ways to play it, like some different scenarios, but just being able to like move 6 inches, open a door, and then move dash, open a door, like wild. That's just like such a huge advantage in like your like APL like economy, and like just being able to go up early doing that. And then the icon bearer has a shotgun, so now he is standing on someone's like back point with a shotgun.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. You can hit their like second, like sometimes their furthest back point, but usually not. It's usually like their second furthest like point, which is like that's not usually where people think they're getting like burned on. And then like that's huge, I think, and because now they're worried about consolidating and like really like addressing that, and they might not even get to their other point, or your other hiding guy steals it, and now you're 4-1ing them, turning point 1, which is it's huge,
hard to come back from.
Yeah. That's difficult. Yeah, it's definitely possible, but it's huge. It's like you do that, and you just play your secondaries, and you're gonna be fine.
So back to the ploys to kind of clean them up, to finish them up here. The more important ones: writhing ingress. And we didn't really mention it, but keep in mind, meticulous plan once per game. So that's pretty big. Writhing ingress, another once per game, like Jason mentioned earlier. You're going to place a token. Now, this is pretty big, and I've seen some contention with this, and it'd be kind of cool to see people chime in, like in the comments or maybe in Squad Games Discord, on what they interpret the rule to be, because I've seen it happen both ways. And we also have a TO here, which it's kind of interesting. I know this could lead into like another hour-long conversation, so we just maybe a quick little take on it. But what this ploy is place one of your ingress tokens within 1 inch of a terrain feature no more than an inch thick, and then until the end of the battle, all of your operatives can move through that terrain feature as if it were not there, so long as they do so within an inch of that token. You can only use this ploy once. So Jason said earlier, a good candidate for this is the Locust and Kellermorph. I 100% agree. It's really good to kind of dash the Kellermorph up to maybe like a heavy wall early on if you want to threaten an elite player, and then just proc writhing ingress right in front of them. It's pretty CP intensive, but the payoff is you can zone out whole sides of a board with one model. So it's kind of worth it in my opinion. But it's also really nice to have later in the game, maybe delete a barricade for a late game charge. And keep in mind, I'm saying delete, but I'm just using a catchphrase. You're not actually deleting these items. You can still retain cover. Your opponent can't use them, and I get that question all the time. Can I use it? No, you can't use it. I would not use it if you could use. I would not play this ploy if you could use it as well. But just keep in mind you're not removing that terrain feature. Now on to the like weird interpretation of it. I've seen a lot of people, especially overseas, they interpret it as though you can move the model kind of through terrain so long as a bit of its base covers the inch. So almost like an ITD door. You're essentially moving through heavy, your base is physically moving through some heavy, but because you're within an inch of that token, it does state you can move through terrain features. It hasn't seen a ton of play for me. I haven't seen a big difference because if I'm being honest, I only learned about this maybe about 6 months ago from Alexa. We were playing a game and he's like, oh, I love this ploy. I can do it here. And I'm like, well, I don't really play it this way. I play it like it just opens up this 2-inch door that you can move through. And he's like, well, if you read it. And I was like, yeah, I definitely see the interpretation, and it's kind of opened my eyes up to it. So it's kind of cool that, well, maybe not cool that it's up for interpretation, but
it says within. So like I played it the way you just said. It's within, so not wholly within. So as long as part of
I'm not saying one way or another is right or wrong. I'm just curious how some people have taken it. I personally see it more so like the ITD door and how you play it as well, Jason. So I don't really see a problem with it, but I've seen some people when I play it, they're kind of like, I don't see it that way. So
typically what Games Workshop has said is that Anything that says wholly within has to be wholly within. And since this does not say wholly within, it does just say within one. But that is within one of a singular point on the battlefield. So it is still relatively a small
area. It's not game
small
breaking
area.
and stuff, but yeah.
Right.
But
it just could give you a little extra movement sometimes. You never know.
It's massive.
yeah,
It's
I think if you put it right next to the wall, right, that would give you the most amount. But if you put it a little bit behind a wall or something like that, I don't think this is letting a model like skip 2 inches outside of a piece of terrain because their base is like barely within one.
Right.
Because you can't. Another GW FAQ that came out stating that you have to put a token on the battlefield, right? It's something that we've always held consistent to as well. So if you can't place the token on the battlefield,
it can't go there.
Yeah, you can't put it underneath the piece of terrain. So it's still even a little less than 1 inch, but it doesn't say wholly within. So there is some room for interpretation of how that is done, right?
Well,
I was real
Squad
quick. I was going to
Jesus has
say,
spoken.
yeah. So I think one of the best things about this is like everyone sets up like I'm playing with people are like always measuring. Okay, I'm outside charge range, I'm outside this, right? So like I like to stage it and use it with the Keller morph a lot, right? Where just you kind of like post him in a spot where like he can't get shot, but then he can like jump out like through one of those like L vantage point things and like. I don't know what the appropriate term for it is, but the L vantage points. He like jump through a corner, shoot someone, jump back, like that. Like talk about like waiting. Like it's a good way to use him as an early activation and get a quick kill, and then like hide him again. And then again, he's running through the wall, so he's getting his rerolls again because he's usually not invisibility after that. But the non-reciprocal charges, like that's where you can set up stuff with the locust, like Anthony was saying, and like. Not so much. I've used it once on Into the Dark to, like he said, like delete a barricade to let my Talon get through, but haven't really used it too much for the barricades. But I could see where that would be useful again to like just get the extra distance, right? So a play that no one was really measuring or thinking about, you have that option. But the non-reciprocal charges with the locust is just like that's the bread and butter with this. If you can set that up, that's
absolutely.
That's
Now
huge,
I do remember when this did come up a while ago, people were saying something about the English language and where the comma is placed in the sentence and all this other kind of bullshit. To be honest, I'm not an English major. I hate the English language, even though I speak it and I read it. It's difficult. So if you guys see something there, feel free to say some stuff, right?
Mhm.
In the end, the game is better with more opinions, right?
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to just listen to us and say like, this is what they said, this is it, or this is what so-and-so said, right? Like think for yourself because that's for the betterment of the game.
So just to think about this with CP, like let's say you use both of these, you're not always using both of these, right? Like Into the Dark capture, you're probably not using either of these.
Maybe you can't use this on ITD walls, so don't think about that.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, guys, I'm leaving.
Just realize that like this is a 2 CP for this. When we talk about the other attack ops that you're using, like you're using hiding, so that's 3 CP, right? So just assume that you're going to be using that 3 CP and probably
throughout the game.
30 points 1 and 2 most likely.
And you're not going to be you're probably not going to use a lot of CP rerolls because that's what the team does innately, right? As long as you're playing them correctly.
Yeah, I'm usually like 1 or 2 throughout the game at most.
Yeah.
Like.
And that's just because you don't have CP to use on anything else. Like what'll happen is like you're gonna get like usually turning point 1 or 2, like you're getting one of those 2 tack offs that you're probably using for free.
Now I'm gonna guess one with the shadows.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess one with the shadows is much more map dependent on when you play it. Right. If there's a lot of light, I'm sure this can be decent on Into the Dark as well. If you put a barricade in a really nice position, they can almost LVO. They can almost act as smoke grenades, right? Like you can, if you put it in front of a door, 2 inches in front of a door to just strictly make things, obscuring. There are a lot of teams in the game now that do ignore obscuring. So like if you're going to play Kasserkin, if you're going to play these other teams, realize that there are teams nowadays that can get around obscuring. So just realize that before you actually tech into it.
Yep.
but make sure, it's a very strong ploy, especially into teams like Veteran Guard who cannot deal with obscuring. Maybe don't play it into Pathfinders, like.
Oh, hell no, I would not. And I realize once again, we're kind of doing a disservice for those of you just listening. One with the shadows is light terrain becomes obscuring. So long as the Wyrmblade operative has a concealed
just
order.
your team again, like your opponents don't get this. So you
the amount of times, yes, dude. So many people are like, oh, okay, so mine is obscure. He's like, no, man, mine is. I'm not trying to make the game harder for me. I'm trying to make it harder for you.
I haven't seen a situation where recently where I would use this, like just because of how I've probably just been playing like somewhat aggressive with a lot of my models, or like
I think
rather
it's
just running the board or hiding. Yeah. And I think that for sure, like I'm sure if there's more light, there's good situations for it. But like, I think you could get pretty cheeky with this and start trying to like bait shots like early on into the dark, and then just like drop a barricade like too far up, so the opponent still thinks they have a good alpha strike, and then you pop this turning point 1, and they've like enough catch with their pants down. It's
particularly strong on. I know that there's a lot of people that play on my terrain. There's a lot of people that play on the WTC terrain these days, but it's really good on Octarius, where you have giant rubble piles. You have big things, right? There's a lot of terrain styles that this is good with, right? Like, so like. The other thing is, like, if you go to LVO, we're going to have a different kind of terrain set. When you go to, Goonhammer Open, who's playing with WTC terrain, or Spain, that are playing with these other terrain sets, they have a lot more heavy, right? So this will see different
less play.
Yeah, it'll see stronger play in some.
Played on too, so that makes a lot of sense. I put on your boards, and then
that was exactly right. That's why I was like, it's the terrain, dude. Yeah.
My terrain has a lot of heavy currently, which it will change eventually. But,
Scramble.
Yeah, we'll have to see if Scramble's still around here in the future.
Oh, he knows something.
I don't know anything.
Get this, man.
But yeah, so that is something that you do want to consider going to a tournament, like going to a tournament very soon where they're playing a lot of Octarius, so that is something to always remember whenever you go to a tournament. You got to play the packet.
I already thought this team was really, really good and probably didn't need any more help. And I was like, oh, that's a useless ability. I'll never use it. Right. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I'm going to use this probably all the time.
Like, that's pretty good, actually.
Now I have to make choices with how I'm going to use my CP. That sucks. Like, it'll play itself. Oh no.
I mean, you could technically use all your CP turning point 1.
I have.
You
before.
could.
I genuinely have. I'm not lying. Yeah. I genuinely have. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty fun. Now Crossfire is the last strategic ploy.
We could probably I'll very quickly say all right. Each time a friendly Wyrmblade operative makes a shooting attack, if it didn't kill the operative, it's basically Crossfire for Brood Brothers. They gain a Crossfire token. If another operative shoots at that operative that turn that had the Crossfire token on it, you can just retain one. But the problem with retaining dice, especially with this team, is with a lot of like conditional AP, like P1 on this team, or like lethal 5, you're kind of screwing yourself over, because the more dice you're retaining, the less dice you have a chance of getting a crit on.
It doesn't seem like you're like, exactly. Like there's
and it's like the team has so many rerolls. Like there's never been a time where I've thought about using this. Your budget for CP needs to go to something else. We could move on, unless Jason wants to say something else about it.
I wanted to use it against the Patriarch, but I just didn't, because it was that not good.
Trust me, you could kill it easily. I promise you.
So TAC Ops.
No, I don't want to talk about these. I don't want to.
I haven't used any of these ever.
I assume they all suck, because we went over TAC Ops quite a lot, and I knew every single one you guys were talking about, right? I didn't hear some kind of like, because even with me and with Vetguard, I call clear the line, like fight, like I just make them easier for myself. No one was saying any kind of crazy words, so I was like, oh, okay. Their faction TAC Ops just suck. Now, this is something that typically happens with White Dwarf teams. This was a White Dwarf team, so they're overly complicated. It's a lot of options, and the TAC Ops generally suck. They do.
Honestly, I think the only other, this ain't no argument here. I do agree with you. It's the White Dwarf teams in their simplicity, but I think the only other White Dwarf team that actually has bad faction tac ops is Warp Coven.
Yeah,
and theirs aren't actually that bad.
Grand Plan is so much fun. Like,
that's what I'm saying. It's like,
that's like, all right, let's
it's
get
not terrible. But like Hunter Clad, Elimination Protocol or Elimination Doctrine, where dude, they just kill things.
Right. They get more wounds.
So, yeah.
Those are that one's generally good.
That was honestly with Mandrakes. That was the kick in the teeth with Mandrakes. It's like they have the world's easiest like tac ops to score on the top of everything else. It's just
most strong teams do. Yeah.
If you look at the teams, a lot of the new teams are just coming out with easier to score tac ops. Because I mean, like when they released the original Kill Team, there were not a lot of tac ops that were easy to score. They were actually objectively difficult to score.
If you didn't have recon, everything was tough.
Yeah, and then Crit Ops came out, and they're like, "Oh, everything except security is relatively easy."
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, I guess I could touch on these super quick if you don't mind, because there's one that has a little play. I'll take like at most 2-3 minutes here.
Okay.
So you have 3 here. You have Nowhere Unreachable, absolutely terrible. The moment you put any choices in your opponent's hand for any type of scoring, it's just bad. So for reference, you need to you give your opponent a token. They place it down more than 6 from their drop zone. And that means they can put it on vantages, they can put it behind walls, the list goes on. And on top of that, you have to be to score it, you have to be within 1 inch of the token and control it. You get 1 for controlling it, you get another for controlling it in another turn. Bad because your opponent can place it. We got that. Then I'll go to the second worst one, which is Mark for Assassination. A lot of people like taking it into elites. I've taken it a few times. It has a little play. I'll break it down super quick. So reveal this tac op in the target reveal of any turning point. The enemy operative with a mark token. If an enemy with a mark token is incapacitated, you score a VP. If you do it again in another turn, you score another. So friendly neophyte operatives can perform an action that's dedicated to this ploy. It's called Mark for Assassination. You walk up to an operative. They cannot have GA2 characteristics. So like you can't even do it on like Vet Guard, little schmucks and stuff, which why would you? But regardless, just another condition that didn't need to be there. You need to be visible to them and within 3, and you perform this action. You can't do it in engagement range, which is also a bummer. That was the only way I ever saw play with it. Was I was like, well, maybe if I could charge a guy and just mark him, that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, you can't even do it in there. So it's a lot of steps. The only time I would ever think about even taking this one is on capture, which is no APL needed for the action for the mission. So you could dedicate a little bit more because here's a little tip. Here's a little tech for those of you that are still sticking around here. The Mark for Assassination is a mission action, and if you're playing capture, you don't have mission actions. So if you want to budget a CP for a few of your guys to mark for assassination, go for it. But the problem is you can only perform it once per turning point. So you're paying a CP for 1 free mission action, so you can't even drop a few guys in, mark a few guys, hedge your bets, and move on with your life. You have to do it in multiple turns.
You've convinced me. I already wasn't going to take this, but you've convinced me never to take it for sure.
Yeah, this team. If I had to, dude, go ahead.
If someone started within 3 inches of your guy, then you use the thing to do it. And then you can shoot him, and you can GA2 another guy to come up and shoot him and guarantee the kill with 2 shotguns. There you go, guys. That is the tech.
Here's the problem.
Up the board, kill something.
Yeah, I mean, you could theoretically score a point on this. If somebody told me I had to score 1 point on this, I could in a game. But overall, the team's theme is all hands on deck. Everyone, despite how they look, needs to do something in this team. If everything goes well, sure, you might wipe your opponent off a board, but otherwise you have no APL distribution. You have a once per game mission action, and it's conditional. They need to be on conceal for it. So if you don't plan properly, you're going to find yourself late game going, man, I'm just outside of 6 of this objective. Man, I'm just out of charge range so I can get that Robin Ransack. Man, I wish I could get back to this point so I can contest it for seized defenses. There's going to be tons of times early on that you're going to notice that, and that's because this team has no fat. You cannot trim any fat on this team. There's plenty of teams, like for example, the first one that comes to mind is Gellerpox or Brood Brothers. Brood Brothers have the familiars. Those are easy. Super Conceal. They're real tiny. They're button pressers. You move them up the board. You could do that first activation if you'd like. I'm sure there's some people that don't like doing it. Same thing goes for Gellerpox. You have your Glitchlings. As long as they're safe, those guys can be some of your first activations. They are the quote-unquote fat. This team has none of that. You cannot have one of your operatives. You can't have one of your agents going, all right, well, I guess I'll just tap this point and pass. They need to be doing things. Your neophyte adepts, they need to be doing things. Everyone is doing something on this team. So the moment I see any mission actions that cost an APL, I'm out. Moving on very quickly to Perfect Ambush. And when I explain it to you guys are going to laugh because no one ever realizes the secondary part of it and how insane it is. Basically, you reveal this in any target step before the 4th. You keep a tally of wounds lost by each player's operatives during that turning point, right? At the end of it, you total up the wounds. Sounds pretty basic, right? Sounds like calculated eradication for Hunterclad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If the total wounds that you've done to your or that your opponent's lost is greater than the wounds you've lost this turn, you get a VP. Here's the problem. The first problem amongst many, right? You only score 1 VP for that. Guess what? The turn you reveal it is the only turn you can score it. The moment you put that out, it's done. If you don't get that in that turn, you've lost 2 points immediately. And guess what?
It's great.
What
I was
was
just say this, and if I was playing like a narrative, like any casual games, I'm always taking this. Like this.
Yeah,
is
sure, it makes sense.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
I would
much
for
fun.
sure agree.
Yeah.
It's flavorful. You just got to kill stuff. Now here is the crazier part of this. I'm going to kind of just paraphrase this second part. Well, it's real short. I'll read it out. If the total wounds lost by enemy operatives during that turning point as a result of cult agent operatives, shooting attacks they made or combat they fought in is greater than the total number of wounds of friendly operatives or of total number of wounds lost by friendly operatives, you score your second one. So in layman's terms, 2 of your models need to carry the entirety of the weight of your opponent's team's damage. So it's insane, really. I don't
think
mean,
you score this with anyone. Like they have to really blunder so you can get.
oh
like,
yeah,
your
you need to
locations on
take
the board.
out.
It has to be
Yeah,
the
you
sniper,
need
the
to take
killer
out some
morph.
agents or some Hulks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
It's insane. You can't score it. There's times where I feel forced into only scoring 1 or 2 points on my last secondary. I'll take this one because Wyrmblade do one thing pretty well, and that's get some kills and do some damage. So the chance of you scoring a point on this in TP2 is not bad. So if you're looking at your list or of your deck of TAC ops and you're struggling with your last one, you could probably throw this one in. I did take it one time this weekend. I scored 1 point on it. So there's that. But yeah, for the most part, this is probably one of the biggest weak points of this team is their faction TAC ops are garbage. This is one of the biggest ones that I wanted buffed.
That's fair.
Yep.
Now, as we're going to round this pod out, is there anything that you guys typically do in conjunction with like operatives? Like, is there like specific things that you do on capture? Is there specific things you do? Loot is relatively simple,
I think, in terms of our setup and how we like organize our operatives.
Yeah. So 2 operatives that activate together. Is there certain things like what are what's the secret tech, the secret sauce behind the team?
I'll go first because I do this. This is one of the things we talked about specifically that was different. I like putting both the cult agents on like the same side of the board. I like just like flooding one side of the board with those operatives and have bodies on the other side. That just seems to have worked well for me. It's kind of how I play some of the other teams I played.
Well, you can really dominate one side of the board and start sweeping.
That's what's interesting. Is like, yeah, you can dominate, but like you kind of now have like you just have these 2 power pieces there, so you can kind of let them push up on one side, and then you push aggressively on the other, and then you counter punch on that other side. So it's like I said, you go up early, and like there's a lot of times where I feel like I'm spinning the board a lot of the time, so I'm playing the game. Like usually my opponent wins one side, I win the other, just depending on how we like set up our power pieces. And we're kind of doing this little like shift, and who does that better? With this, you can kind of like get that situation going, and then you can just kind of be like, oh, well, I have my cult operatives here. I'm actually going to win this side as well, or like hold it. It's interesting, but that's worked well for me. And also, like I said, I like pairing the talent with my other operative on the off chance I can use unquestioning loyalty to get an advantage there.
Fair. Now, do you do that on like loot, secure, and capture, or is that just your general philosophy of how you
just to simplify,
roll with the team?
Like I played against Brood Brothers
fair.
the first time, and I chose attacker for obviously I wanted to go like have the option of potentially going first. But the main reason was like watch where you put your patriarch. I'm gonna put my cult agents on the opposite side of the board. Like that was like the other reason that made sense.
Patriarch is a monster. I know a lot of people keep saying that he's not good, but you know I've seen otherwise.
I also I use Wraithing Ingress a lot, and like it kind of lets me get more out of that by being able to do like the Kelemorph popping in and out of the walls, but also now I've created potentially like a non-restrictable charge with the Locust. So like having it just kind of you get a little bit more out of that strategic play in my eyes if you do it that way. But that's not the main reason. The main reason is that just kind of simplifies it for me. Like just makes it easy, and then when you're dropping people in from like hiding, like kind of dealer's choice at that point. Like you can overload one side, or you can support the cult agents if they really need it.
Okay. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of. It's not that we disagree or that we're like contradicting each other. I think I'm more so just like depends, like always. Yeah. Just depends. If I see my opponent, like if I take attacker on ITD and I see my opponent put like 4 intercessors on one side, yeah, both my agents are probably going on that side. Like it just makes sense. So, I mean, I see the logic. I don't know. I think I kind of tend to lean towards like things are going to go poorly for me. My guns aren't going to go off, and maybe that's not always the best way to think about things, but maybe find a middle ground of like, well, maybe things won't always go poorly, but on average, this should happen. And I could definitely see how that could pay off, stacking a few or a couple less bodies on one side and just making it like 2 big pieces. I think I'm just like more of a hybrid pick. My big motif with this team is like move up the board, snatch some points, and force my opponent to do things. Whether that's just generating VP on objectives or on my secondaries and like zoning out an objective of his, or it's, taking out a flank pretty easy with like a shotgun or 2, seeing a weak point like, oh, hey, there's only one model over here. If I take this out, that collapses his flank and forces a lot of models. In my mind, I've said a bunch of times, the moment you can take your opponent off of their like trajectory, off of their dedicated win path, you've thrown them for a loop immensely. Like the moment, because you just start adding in all these chances of failure, all these points of weakness for them.
Yeah.
Of, well, now they're going to think, man, do I want to go for the killer morph or do I want to go over here and steal a point? Well, I don't know. It's up to you, right? And it's not necessarily the better option or the worse option, but if I can get you to make some choices, I'm hoping I come out the other side with my choices being better than yours. But in terms of
flexibility of the team, like you're saying, like if you just kind of throw them off their game plan, like most people can't like pivot as well. Like I said, I just put my first game against Brood Brothers and that free dash, like that was a lifesaver. Like person was able to like swing gunners around to like do kind of counter what I was doing, like intentionally let the patriarch come up the board and then storm the middle and like the other side of the board. Like they were able to move a piece just because of that. But had they not had that free dash play and they used it 3 times in the same model, they wouldn't be able to respond. But that's just like this Brood Brothers, like pretty flexible team as well. But I would say one thing is the icon bearer. If you're going to stack the cult agents on one side, I would consider putting the icon bearer on the other side of the board just so you have another pseudo 3 APL model. So like,
I like that.
Yeah, that's just being a heads up and like distribution of APL, which is the big part of the game, obviously.
Yeah, sometimes just a simple trick or strategy is you want to sometimes it's okay to throw away a model if you know that you can get something better in return. Like, so sometimes, like I did it twice this past weekend, I would throw up a Melta, and then I had when there was already a Mandrake nearby, so they had to come by and support it with a secondary Mandrake to kill it. And then I was able to use a demo man and come up and possibly trade for 2. Or against Brood Brothers this past weekend as well. I did the same thing, and I was able to kill their own demo mind and a different guy because I got first turning point activation instead. So, sometimes you always want to keep those guys safe, but they can also be used for bait. If you're going into Space Marines and you really need to get 2 of those models dead, maybe you throw up a model and do some damage, and then you're able to kill both of them because now they're just super out of position. So
Agreed.
yeah. So But yeah, we'll start to wrap up the podcast here. It's been a long time. I apologize to both of you.
No. I think I need to apologize. Dude, if I'm being honest, the crazy thing about it, I think I barely scratched the surface, and that's not a complaint. That's not me saying no. It's just like that's how long I've been playing this team, man. It was fun though. So my bad.
No.
Embrace the shotguns. That's one.
They're like when the function got Wyrmblade, you know.
When the function got Wyrmblade, baby. That's right. That's me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tech behind this team because this team is so complicated. It is more relatively complicated than some of the other teams out there. So, it's good to be able to actually have somebody be able to talk about this team that's both of you that are very knowledgeable in this team so that we can, share some knowledge to the community. So maybe they can level up their gameplay in their own regions, in their own areas and, keep going on. And if you guys want to reach out to them, they are in the Discord. So I don't know if they want to talk to you, but maybe they will. So, hit them up on a DM, see what's up. But
be prepared for all the information I have.
Yeah, he's just going to data dump into you, But is there anything you guys want to shout out as we round this out?
I just want to shout out Brennan Bean, Kiddo Crew on Discord again. Just appreciate
I was about to do
the
that.
conversation. Oh, dude, you got it.
That's my boy,
you do your shout out. Yeah.
No, you do it. You do it. Go for it.
I like this awesome dude. So one of my first games ever of Kill Team, I actually played against him online. I tried playing Harlequins. It was the one team I tried to play besides Intercession. And he was playing Blooded and got me with a Diabolic Bomb. And I had like 3 Harlequins next to each other. That was really bad at Kill Team at that time. Yeah. But that was like cool. And he after that game, he was like down to just like chat and like talk to me and explain like what was going on. And so that was really awesome. So I appreciate that. And like, I'll just say like, if you guys want any tips with like teams, like he did some write-ups on, I think he did Exaction Squad was the last one he did. And then he did Wyrmblade as well. So it's pretty cool to play a couple games, write him up. So I'd say just check out his channel or his Patreon. And like, if you have any tips, he's a great person to like teach people how to play the game. So I appreciate all his advice.
That's fair.
Hell yeah.
That's fair. How about you, Anthony?
Just shout out to like the OG Wyrmblade players. I know who you guys are. Like John B, you're the boy. You were playing him in the trenches with me. Armor of Contempt for sure. I know, he has the same issues as I do, back in the day, we're in the trenches with Wyrmblade dealing with the problems and stuff, shout out to him. He's been around. That's another great Wyrmblade player. We're not the only ones in the world. There's tons of them, probably, a lot more better than me too, for sure. And then just shout out to all the people that have reached out in the past asking to play Wyrmblade, Screwball, Average Joe, Kiddo Crew even. That's why I was like, I want to shout him out because he was like, all right, man, I'm tired of getting my ass whooped with this team. And the amount of times I've heard that, because he played Blooded all the time and he was the Blood player. That's what he won. That's what he won Kill Scream with. He's a great opponent. But just shout out to all those guys. Just know I see you guys. You guys are not unheard. Don't think, why wasn't I on the podcast or anything? I see y'all. It's just, I know Dakotah, we hung out this weekend, so I was probably the first one to come to mind. And
you're also one of the best Wyrmblade players in the U.S. So
yeah.
let's
whatever, man. It doesn't matter. Shout out to everybody playing Wyrmblade, man. I'm right there with you.
Keeping it humble, I like it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the pod, dude.
Yeah, man. We're gonna gas you up. G, go ahead.
Yeah,
what are you gonna say? What you got?
So you can find Squad Games on Instagram. We're at Squad Games Entertainment, and you can find me painting models on Wargaming, there as well, Wargaming_Studios. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can join the conversation in the comments. Tell us what you think about Wyrmblade. Tell us how you play Wyrmblade. Maybe you think these guys don't know what they're doing. You want to argue with them. That's cool. Or you want to support them and be like, you know what? These guys taught me how to play it. Day of Ascension is coming now.
Oh, it's such a good book, dude. Please read Day of Ascension. I was telling Dakotah, read it. I was telling him and Jason.
Maybe we'll do it for the book club.
I love the theme of the team too. Like the podcast is over, but it's a great. Like I love the whole
read Day of Ascension.
That's probably
See, I love Angels of Death because it's just a bunch of Space Marines just murdering Gene
I love
Stealer
it
Gold,
too.
like
I love
Wyrmblade.
it
You know,
too.
it's my fucking favorite.
I got to finish
Sorry.
the show. Last 2 episodes. I'll get there.
It's also Brood Brothers, but you know, it is what it is.
Exactly. And if you don't want to join there, you're listening to this on the podcast, you can join us on our Discord server. You know, we got the link in the description for you as well. Feel free to share this video. Feel free to share the podcast to someone who you think would benefit from it. And if you want to help us in a more personal way, we do have a Patreon. Patreon members help us providing more live events, help us do more videos and stuff like that, like the Hobby Highlander series. The newest one just came out. You know? Yeah. That's my shout
That
out.
is not what I wanted.
That is my hair with longer hair.
It's supposed to be here.
A handsome
Did it go-
individual.
there
right
it is.
There it is.
Oh wait,
There
not
it
that one.
is.
That guy's not handsome.
There it is. The Hobby Highlander.
Hey.
You see a blurred version of him in the front.
But yeah, that's also what I was going to shout out. I was going to shout out that, you know, we don't only make Kill Team content. It is a passion of ours. We do love it. We do run LVO and Kill Team. This year at LVO, we are going to try to do a Hobby Highlander specific live show at the end of Friday. We're going to try and make that work with Frontline Gaming. So maybe we might have test palettes so you can come out and paint with us, just watch and do all that kind of stuff. We're very big into hobby. We really pushed the Kill Team hobby track, and I like to think that because of us, we kind of made it happen with Games Workshop. Now that they fully support it on ITC, it's something that we very much love and adore. So if any of you guys are hobbyists out there, thank you, and thanks for listening. Thanks for getting there. And also, if you want to see more of us, check out our Patreon. We do have a Squad Games Redacted podcast, which a new one's coming out quite soon. That's stuff that's we can't put on YouTube and we can't publicly talk about because there's some crazy shit that's happened in our lives.
G-Man
to say the
OnlyFans.
least. And, yeah, that's where he posts his feet pictures. So,
Oh, I gotta get in there.
Man, hell yeah, dude. Don't forget to like and subscribe on our goal to 1,000. If we hit 1,000 by then, our goal to whatever the next milestone is.
absolutely.
Brilliant.
We're getting there. So, until next time, everyone, thanks for watching.
See ya.
Peace.
The Squad Games podcast is a production of Squad Games Entertainment. For more information on Squad Games, please visit our website at lestersworkshop.com/squad-games.